Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day one of the Public Management Academy project presentations. I am overwhelmed with joy and pride just for how much you all have worked, grown, and just developed over this past year. I feel like a proud dad, or almost like for me in my tradition, like Christmas morning to kind of see what all the presents are under the tree. I want to congratulate not only the participants for all of your hard work and dedication towards the certification and your projects, but also I really wanted to shout out our team. Pat is the leader of our group and has really just taken us to a whole nother level. And with way that the program has been facilitated throughout the whole year, the dedication to all of you individually, and especially the projects. That's where the proof is in the pudding. And when I was talking to her about how things were going this round, this rotation, she was just telling me that every one of them was a drop the mic moment, and that not just the fact of the impact, but that everybody had a really passion and were fulfilling their purpose in life and hitting the goals for their particular job, their organization, and making a difference in the community. And that's what PMA is all about. That's why we're here. Not just us from the administration side of things, but this is why we're all in this field, is to take our game to the next level and make a difference in the community. So Kat, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for everything that you and your team has done to put us in the position today. So Marisa, Nina, everybody else behind the scenes that has just taken our game to a whole nother level. Thank you also to our sponsoring organizations. We couldn't be here today if obviously the organizations did not give us the financial support to send their folks, and then also the release time. We know that it's a major commitment, not only on the participants to take out of their time during the day, but that the organizations during that time also have to make a commitment for the work release. So we want to thank all of the organizations that have sent folks to the program, not only for PMA 12, but all the other 11 cohorts previous to that. And the ones I would say that are partners, our partners in crime in trying to make this program not only just develop and grow, but just excel and take it to the next level. So thank you for your investment in us. And for those, again, well, let me say this. I'm supposed to say that I don't have any favorites, but PMA 12 is my favorite because it's my cohort. I'm here along with you for this group, and I'm going to tell you right now that I was very intimidated to do my projects, which will be next week, but because I just knew that you all were raising the bar, I guess, and that's what we're supposed to do. Every cohort raises the bar another level, and I'm very confident that this group has done that, and I'm just honored again and proud to be part of it with you all as a peer, as a friend, and hopefully as a resource as we move forward. Again, congratulations to everybody. And I really want to have this to be a celebration. Hopefully, I know that the people that are presenting today are probably nervous or anxious that everything goes well, but this is a chance for you to celebrate and shine, and to really take a look at all the things you've done over this past year and enjoy and celebrate what you've accomplished. So that's the tone that I want to start with today. And I hope that we, have a good time as we move through this. Kat is an amazing facilitator, as you know, so don't worry about today's journey. She will guide us and guide you all through this every step of the way without any kind of problems whatsoever. So I want to pass it over to Kat for instructions on how the day is going to flow, evaluations and transitions, and maybe discuss any other details. So Kat, can you jump in here at this time?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Rob. Okay, so this morning, we have the program. So as you know, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. You all have this. It was in the Outlook invite and in your email. So if you would like to pull it up and follow along, that would be great. Okay, so today we have Julianne, Stephanie, Amy, Rita, Yana, Peter, and Wendy. Okay, and so what I'll do is right before you're due to present, I will promote you to panelist. Okay, and when you come up, you'll need to turn your screen on and unmute yourself and share your screen. If you have any technical difficulties, don't worry. Okay, I'll pause the recording and I'll help you out. All right, so don't worry about that. The other piece is the questions. Okay, so please prepare questions and answers for each presentation. So as you're watching these presentations and you're in the audience, make sure you prepare a few questions or a comment for each presenter. It really helps people to wrap up their project, and for their written report, those questions and that feedback can be really helpful. So make sure you do that. And along with that, fill out an evaluation for each and every project. Okay, so I did send, if you're in PMA 12, you have all the links. I had sent you those earlier. If you are not in PMA 12 and you're here as a guest, first of all, thank you so much for coming. We're really glad that you're here with us. Please look in the chat. I will be posting those links for each project evaluation. That being said, we do have a guest with us here today. I noticed in the chat or in the participants attendees, I can see who's here. So as people come in, if any board members come in, I am going to see if they might like to come and say hello to everyone and offer a few words of support. So Scott, I do see you in the audience right now. I'm going to try promoting you to panelist and see if you're there to say a few words to everyone before we get going. So Scott Howard is a member of our board. Scott, are you there? There he is.
Good morning.
Scott, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. I don't have much to say. I'm just excited to see everybody's presentations, and good luck.
Thank you, Scott. Scott, would you tell us just a little bit about you and why you are part of our board?
Well, I went through the PMA a couple years ago, and then Leadership Academy after that. And I'm a court administrator in a municipal court just outside of Toledo, Ohio. And Rob and Kat asked me to be on the board earlier this year, and I was happy to join to have a little bit of a presence in Northwest Ohio.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So for those of you that don't know, we are working on an expansion plan for Leadership Academy, and our first stop will be up in the Sandusky, Toledo area at Maumee Bay. So if you are up in that area and you're interested in Leadership Academy, we've got one coming at you is spring 2025.
I just wanted to jump in here and say, though, to good luck to everybody. I'm not sure if I said that, but you all got this. Don't worry. I also wanted to say, when Scott came on, thank you, Scott, and all of our board members. I forgot to mention that. We now have a full-fledged statewide active, and I think that's the key word, active board. I am on the executive committee for the National Certified Public Manager Consortium. And I'm going to brag here for a minute. Not every state has an active board like we do. Every member of our board is chipping in on a variety of different ways, whether that's curriculum, marketing, project support, expansion, and a number of different initiatives. And I can't say how thankful that I am to have this support, not only here at Cleveland State University, but also statewide through our various partners. So I just want to give a shout out to them. I forgot to do that in my initial comments. This support has led us to have full cohorts, like sold out, drop the mic cohorts. We are starting Leadership Academy 37 on October 10th, and we hit our goal. We are starting Public Management Academy on number 14 on October 3rd, and we hit our goal. And this past Friday, the Leadership Academy number 36, which is down in Columbus, just started their second cohort as well. So I'm saying that as to brag, but mostly to say thank you to everybody that's been there, because it's just phenomenal. When Kat and I designed this program a long time ago, we never thought that we'd be here today. We thought this would be a good idea. We figured there would be a market for it, especially with the baby boomer retirements and the great resignation that went from COVID, but we never realized it would take off like this. So I'm just saying that, not to brag or be obnoxious, but to say that I'm overwhelmed with joy. And I also just want to say before we get started, thank you to the state of Ohio for your participation. Our first person up, Julie, has been a phenomenal participant, but also my partner in crime at the Lean Ohio Boot Camp office. And Julie, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for us over the past year. And just the partnership with the Lean Ohio office has been phenomenal. Just a great partnership, great team, and looking forward to see how your career continues to grow and advance over time. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Kat to get the party started. Take it away.
Our first presenter is Julianne Finnegan, and she did her project on Lean Ohio Boot Camp. All right, over to you, Julie.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Good morning. Thank you for that warm welcome, and thank you for the partnership, Rob. It's been great, both before I started this program, but throughout the entire time. I've really enjoyed it, and also to you, Kat, just fantastic administration of the program. You've always been there for us, so thank you all. My name is Julie Finnegan. I work for the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services now, actually, but through the bulk of this program, I was actually employed at Ohio Department of Administrative Services, working in the Lean Ohio office. And so my project there focused on our bread and butter training offering, the Lean Ohio Boot Camp, but we also wanted to look at the A3 project completion and effectiveness as part of that training program. So that's what I'm going to go into today. Before we get into too much of the details of the project, I want to introduce what Lean Ohio is and what Boot Camp is. Lean Ohio is an office at the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, and their task is to make government processes simpler, faster, better, and less costly. And they do that through focusing on Lean Six Sigma project facilitation of small group work, and also Lean Six Sigma training for the state. In my role there, I started as the training lead and eventually transitioned into more project work. And as part of that training lead, like I said, we run our boot camp, which is a 4-day training with an immersive simulation designed to frustrate state employees with a bad process. So it demonstrates what can happen over time when we don't employ the process of, or the thought of process improvement and the tools that we teach in that class. And so we really lay the foundation with a bunch of lean tools and teach people how to go back to their offices and look at their processes, look at their pet peeves, look at the pain points in their work and say, what can I do using these lean tools to make that process better, faster, simpler, and less costly for all of us. So that's what we were looking at. And like I said, through that transition for us, from me being the lead facilitator to who we hired to be the lead facilitator, we had a lot of conversations around the opportunity for us to practice what we teach. It's very easy to get busy and not think about continuous improvement. And so our conversations really led us to have this thought that we should be improving our bootcamp offering, not only from a customer experience standpoint and evaluating it from more of like a human-centered design approach, but also what our goals were for Lean Ohio and why we're offering the training, what our purpose is. And so when we do that, we followed the traditional Lean Six Sigma methodology and we set our scope. So we knew we wanted to increase project submissions that come after the training is completed. And then we also needed to identify those critical factors that influence whether or not a course participant or course attendee is going to complete a project at all, because it is optional. And so the scope that we were looking at initially in our discussions was the whole picture. And so it's from when that bootcamp lead says, next year we're going to offer these many dates, to the completion of that training program and the submission and approval of their A3 project. So we looked holistically at the entire situation to make sure that we're focusing on the right areas within our control and making the most impact we could on this first iteration, but also coming up with a plan for continuous improvement. And so that led us to establishing what those goals were through coordination with our project sponsor, who's the director of Lean Ohio, but also reaching out to our network and our customers and understanding where we're falling short and what we should be focusing on for their goals as well. So we wanted to create a standard process with those supporting documents that really support our services and administrative functions around boot camp training. So how can we make the transition between lead facilitators easier, more standard, to make sure that we are delivering the same consistent product in our training, no matter who's offering it. We also wanted to increase those projects results, and that will increase our savings, the benefits to Ohio taxpayers, and the services that they receive. But the more projects mean there's more efficient processes scattered throughout the entire organizations. Additionally, we wanted some actionable items to implement that would build out that continuous improvement plan for boot camp. So this project took us a little over a year to complete. I want to say maybe 18 months is how long we worked on this, which is normal for a black belt level project, which we did end up achieving that certification as part of this. But we knew that we couldn't address everything or test everything in that time frame. And so we really wanted to think holistically about our approach and come up with the next steps that we could do after our project was complete, but it's a continuous improvement plan for Lean Ohio and boot camp. So through that conversation, it was really important for us to do the SWOT analysis to understand, how can we understand and maximize our strengths and our opportunities while addressing, not ignoring, but minimizing the impact of maybe some of our weaknesses and threats. So knowing that this was one of the most popular state trainings, we had a large network that we could tap into to get an understanding of our baseline offering, why people do or do not move on, why they come to class, what benefits they're seeing, things like that. And then we also recognize that a lot of the changes could be 100% within our control. So that was also one of the big things for us, is understanding that while we're relying on people behaviors to change, it also relied on a lot of agency network support that we could not necessarily affect through our project, but we wanted to identify it and talk through that and how we could support that to make it either happen more often or more easily, or identify where it's not and how we could step in for that. We also needed to recognize, and I think it was really important, that if we're asking people to go back and do a project, while we kept the threshold low for what constitutes a project or a good project that would be approved, and making sure that they're not shooting for the moon on their first attempt, we really want them to get the basics, to feel the wind, to know how easy lean tools could be. We have significantly siloed work throughout the agencies. We have a lot of employees who come through the training who aren't aware or attuned to the work that's being done as part of this strategic plan. And so how to get that sponsorship support on project work was something that we recognized we were lacking in teaching them. But then we also have an overworked workforce that really resonated in the surveys and the focus groups that we did at the beginning of this project, where they said, we would love to do work. We would love to go back and do a project, but we're in a training for 4 days. We're not checking our emails. We're not doing the work that's the day-to-day that's piling up while we're gone. And then we get back and we just have to catch up, and the work never stops. And we can't even stop to find a project, let alone start working on a project. And so it was really important for us to understand those constraints that everybody is facing, where from our perspective, we've set you up with tools, we've set you up for success, and we really want an easy to do project that can only affect you or a few people. So we're not asking for something too big, but the barriers are still the same. And that was important for us to recognize. Moving from our understanding of what the project could be, we wanted to gather data. If anyone is black belt or green belt or lean trained in general, you know how important it is for us to use data in our projects. So we started looking at our baseline to understand, the larger picture of the problem that we were looking to address. And so between 2013 and 2022, we saw that we put 655 state employees through boot camp training, and that's where they stopped. So that does not account for the hundreds of other employees who came through boot camp, got their project approved, and went on to green belt, black belt, master black belt, anything above and beyond our camo belt. The 655 employees are the ones who stopped at camo belt, and of them, only 165 did the project and chose not to move on. So we had about a 25% completion rate of those people who probably in our population are not moving on. They came to the training for that foundational knowledge, but that's where their journey started and stopped. And so how do we improve that project work from that 25% threshold? So it was really important for us to understand that baseline there, but then expanding our scope and understanding that multiple components affect what we determine as a full project or what our standards of success are or our goals are. We wanted to look at how long it was taking them to do project work. And maybe if we did things to support them in doing those projects sooner, meaning closer to the completion of class, so that the tools and the knowledge were fresher in their minds, they felt more confident in it, and they were still engaged with us from a network perspective that we could support them better. So we looked at this and we looked at the entire population. So that's the 1,000+ employees that we've trained throughout our entire lifespan of the boot camp training. And the median days for project approval there was 228. And then again, recognizing that that entire population data was too large because there's been multiple iterations of boot camp, multiple different lead facilitators and trainers. At one point, it was a very decentralized offering for us. So we had teams going out and doing it all over the state. We recognized that that was probably too big to reflect our current state of things. So we pulled in and created a project population data set. And that was anyone that I personally had trained. Since I had been with Lean Ohio for about 4 years at that time, I had run a significant portion of our training, and we narrowed our focus into saying, you know, that was within my control. I knew how that program was being administered. I knew how projects were being approved. We wanted to focus in on that and then use our test period under the new lead to determine, you know, those were comparable population data sets. So we had a better picture of the reality of the situation. And with that population, we recognized that the median days of completion were around 71 days, meaning within 71 days of completing boot camp, we were seeing the average amount of projects come through. And then not to bore you too much with more data, but we wanted to understand what that relationship meant. And it's probably very easy for you to have made this assumption as well. But obviously, as the number of days increase after you came to training, the likelihood for you to submit a project and get it approved decreases. So the knowledge is leaving your mind, you're not applying it. It's not something that you forgot necessarily, but the likelihood of you using it and submitting a project goes down the longer, further out you are from class. And one of my last data slides, we also wanted to look at then why participants maybe were not getting approved the first time. So where were we lacking in our training capability? Where should we improve how we're teaching them a tool or a topic to increase project success? Because we recognize that people might be submitting projects and we're sending feedback back, but they're not resubmitting. And so how can we set them up for more success where that first time submission is getting the approval and there's not the back and forth? Because the more back and forth there is, the lower likelihood there was that someone was going to submit a project. So we did a Pareto diagram of capturing as A3s were submitted, where were we seeing the errors? Where were we having to provide the feedback to have resubmissions on that project work? And we focused in on anything that we felt would have disqualified them from approval. We tracked it using a simple concentration diagram. And we recognized that where we talk about root cause identification and data analysis are our biggest areas of opportunity for improvement. Those are where we are having to send back A3 submissions and ask for revisions because either we weren't providing clarity on what we were expecting, or we were not teaching that tool or those tools very well to the class so that they could understand what we wanted to see in project work. So that really built out a good understanding for us of where we wanted to look for improvement opportunities and how we would brainstorm on those improvement tests that we did. We also did a failure modes and effects analysis tool, and the RPN score just identifies that risk priority number. And so It's how often something could occur, what the severity of that occurrence would be, and if we can detect it. So we ran through a bunch of scenarios based off of our network feedback of how we could do things better to not only rank them in the FMEA tool, but to then have a conversation through what's within our control. A lot of the things that our network were asking us to improve upon indicated that it was more partnership and support that we could give to them, but a lift that they needed to take on. And we could not force anyone to take on that lift anymore. So we wanted to talk through, what they were asking for and what was something that they needed to do versus something they were asking for and we could do to support that work. And we went through the FMEA tool to make sure we really identified those areas of opportunity. So how can we help agencies identify projects that are available for people to work on? How can we be better at our communication around the project? How can we help the class understand where to identify agency drivers so that they have a higher likelihood of having a project sponsor greenlight their project? Things like that were the conversations we were having in order to focus in on the testing solutions that we wanted to pilot. And so that moves us into that hypothesis testing element. And I apologize again, this is part of that black belt element, but we run hypothesis tests where our null hypothesis is assuming that there's no change, assuming that no matter what we're testing, all of our data is going to show that everything is the same and we did not move the mark. So ultimately, we want to reject that null hypothesis. And the alternate hypothesis is what we would like to see come true. And so we're testing that A3 submission rate. We were hoping for that population would be less than our pilot cohorts, meaning we increase our submission rate. We also wanted to test that accuracy rate. So how accurate are those A3s coming in? So we wanted to see an increase in accuracy so that we don't have back and forth revisions and edits that we're requesting. And then we wanted to decrease our completion time, meaning we wanted to see submissions come in faster than that 71-day average. So this is where we were focusing our data collection plan on the project. And this is really the meat of what we did. This one slide summarizes over a year's worth of work. Lean Ohio determined that we would implement the following interventions that address those top failure modes that we identified and increase the data, those hypothesis tests that we wrote up, but really move the metrics in a positive way that aligns with the goals of the project and the goals of Lean Ohio hosting the boot camp training. And so the interventions that we came up with was the creation of an A3 tollgate check sheet, meaning we handed out to participants a sheet that has a few questions of prompts that says, do you think you're ready to move on from this component of your project? Have you been able to answer these following questions? And did you put them into your A3? And so it really asks like, do you understand the current state? Have you collected data on what the current state looks like? Do you know what your root causes are so that you're targeting improvements in the right way? So those types of questions that we identified as some of those revision points, we built out that tollgate check sheet. So participants get that in class, they take it back with them, and they're supposed to use that as a personal check saying whether or not, can I move forward with my project? We also created the A3 feedback evaluation form. So we standardized this. Previously, I was emailing people back, typed out, in this box, this is how I would change this. Or in this box, have you considered this? This is what I'm looking for in your A3 report. Instead of doing it like that and wanting to make it more clear and standard for anyone to help review A3s and give feedback, we stood up the standard evaluation form. So it's a scorecard where we give a score of 1, 2, or 3 based off of how well you met the requirements of each component of that A3. We have a comment section, we have a revision, like an overall revision section, an overall assessment of the project so that we have very targeted feedback and they don't have to filter through an email to read what we had to say. It's all on one sheet. The third intervention is directly connecting those training attendees to their agency lean liaisons for project support. So previously we were emailing all of the cohorts and copying the lean liaisons for each agency to say, hey, this is the cohort going through. We'll see you in class next week. Here's some instruction and information for class. And we recognize that that was probably not the best customer service, and it left a lot of questions, especially when participants would show up and they had no idea that there was potentially an A3 project component. Because it's optional, we didn't have any threshold that you had to meet to come to class, and we introduced it to you in class. But this way, we actually email each participant one-on-one, connected them to their agency lean liaison for support. We asked that they hold a pre-meeting and introduce them to the A3 project component. And then you can also see that the solution number 5 is something that we rolled out that goes with that meeting too. And it's actually a guide where they fill out questions together on those red flags that we identify as projects being too large for a first-time person, or it's not strategically aligned, or it's a just do it opportunity. And so they work through those 13 questions together. And as they answer them, the sheet turns from green, good project, to medium, yellow, which says like, maybe we should reconsider this, to red, don't do this project. We will not approve it. We do not support that. You're either shooting too high, or it's something that you shouldn't be tackling, like a sacred cow or something like that. And so together, we're really putting those components out there 30 days before class to make sure that everyone is connecting and talking about project work specific to their agency before they even come to class. And the other 2 interventions that we tested was a 30-day follow-up meeting, recognizing that we wanted to make sure we're continuously engaging that cohort, making them feel supported after class, instead of saying, hey, it's been great 4 days spending with you, go forth and do good. We're actually checking back in with them after 30 days and 60 days to see how project work's going. What are their barriers? What did they experience when they went back to their agencies? Do they need help? Do they want to partner with somebody else? Just basically talking through, what they thought they had for a project prior to coming to class, since we set them up for that opportunity with their lean liaison. Now that they've gone through class, how do they feel about it? Do they think they can do that project, and or how is it going? And then that 60-day was really a lot of, well, I couldn't do my project, or I had too much work going on, or I need another opportunity because I found out that leadership doesn't support this direction right now, or whatever it is. And we build that sense of community with them as a cohort, so they stay connected and recognize that they can support each other. But we're not leaving them hanging, and we're staying in contact with them closer to that 71-day median average of project submission, hoping that that would influence them to submit projects sooner. So looking at the metrics, this is the result of all of our pilot testing. So the metrics that we specifically focused on, again, this correlates to our hypothesis testing, those A3 submission rates. So prior to, our population data had about a 23% submission rate. And after our project and those interventions that we piloted, we had a 26% rate. So we did see a 13% improvement in submissions, meaning more people were submitting projects to us. We also saw an increase in accuracy, meaning those areas that we thought we weren't teaching well, that we could support them more and help them submit more accurate projects to us for the first time approval versus revisions, went from 28 to 43%. So that was a great 54% improvement. And that really made us feel like we were making things better for our customers, those participants in class. The only thing that we saw negatively affected was the completion time. So before, we were seeing about an average of 71 days submission. We were seeing an after average of about 100 days. So we did reduce that number in the negative way by 55%. However, we felt that since we were seeing more submissions and they were more accurate, maybe people were taking their time, being intentional, and filling it out correctly. They were still submitting it within the time frame that we were hoping to see. And because the magnitude of this project and just the length of it, we did cut off our data collection after 180 days. And so we could have continued collecting data, and I'm sure our numbers would not look as severe as far as the completion time on average, but we did cut it off for the sake of the project. Overall, we're very pleased with these metrics and the results of the implementation of all of our piloted tests. However, we did not adopt all of them. So we're going to move into our hypothesis results just to close the loop on that. We did get to reject the null, which is a good thing, on both our test 1 and test 2. However, that test 3, we failed to reject the null because we did not see that our median population completion time be greater than our average cohort completion time through this pilot. Like I said, the 71 days is actually less than what we saw. So after we piloted all of the solutions, we got back together and we wanted to make sure that we understood what we experienced, what we saw as a result from the cohorts, and really make sure we weren't leaving anything out or sub-optimizing the experience for anybody. So we did do a survey of all of the boot camp cohort members who went through our hypothesis testing and piloting of solutions to make sure that we didn't affect anything in the negative, but we increased their experience through this as well. And we applied a change management lens to this. And through that observational analysis of the survey results, those interventions increased the training's awareness, desire, knowledge, and ability to apply those lean tools and complete an A3 project. So all in all, we saw positive results, both from an understanding of the tools and what we were teaching, but their confidence and capability of going back and doing those projects, their desire to go back and do a project and belt and move on to another belt level. And so our customer feedback was that everything led to a more positive experience for them. The improvement summary, we just had some non-standard documentation that became standard documentation so anyone could take over. That project work increased through 13% in submissions, and we have a continuous improvement plan for boot camp built out and recommendations for them to follow in the future. We have better supported participants. Those internal agency connections are stronger and more developed now, and everyone has a better understanding that there is a project component to class and what it takes to get that A3 approved. The cohorts are better prepared to apply their learning, and we are better clearly communicating our expectations to them and lifting everybody up through better communication, supporting documentation and resources. Finally, those recommendations that we made to Lean Ohio's sponsor, the director, is that they build that sponsorship coalition with all of the agency directors and those Lean liaisons to increase the awareness of Lean's benefits to state government. We want to evaluate that role of the Lean liaison to help reinforce them in participants completing their A3 projects. So how can we support those Lean liaisons at agencies to do more projects there? We wanted to keep pilot solutions 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the 30-day check-in, all of the feedback forms and the standard work we did, we dropped the tollgate review because people weren't using that as much, and we dropped the 60-day check-in. It was low attended and people reported that it not affected them as much. And we implemented or wanted to implement or recommended to implement, those open office hours to help create more space for A3 project support outside of that 30-day follow-up. So how can we continue to be available to them in a standard way? In conclusion, those several factors within an agency do influence whether or not that attendee is going to complete their A3 project. There's a lot of things like sponsorship support, whether or not they're confident in their facilitation skills, the lean culture at that agency or lack thereof. But ultimately, those recommendations that we made outline a continuous improvement plan to support the agency liaisons and evaluate how we can better support them in their role and build out Lean Ohio's boot camp offering to be continuously evolving and supporting our participants better. So with that, I will take any questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. That was incredible. Nice job. Stephanie Odden asks, can you touch on intervention number 3 a little more? How will you be directly connecting with training attendees for project support? Email, Teams meetings, in-person meetings, etc.
Yep. So we sent that email. Like I said, Stephanie, we initially really just did like an email blast of you're coming to training, making the Lean liaisons at the agencies aware that they've got someone coming through. That was all we really did. And so we recognize that we need to be way more intentional at connecting our network because agency politics are interesting, agency TOs are interesting. And so those people maybe felt like they couldn't reach out to that Lean liaison, or that Lean liaison is busy and didn't have time to reach out to them. And so instead of leaving that maybe unsupported vagueness out there, we emailed them both saying, hey, Stephanie, your lead liaison is Jana, and we're introducing you. Here's a project tool that we want you to do together. Please meet for 30 minutes before you come to class. So we were really giving more intentional instruction on what we expected from both the lead liaison and the class participant before. And then in class, we actually talked to them a little bit more, like who met with their lead liaison, and if they didn't, how can we then engage them on breaks or at lunchtime to talk about what we asked them to do. And then afterwards, we also would celebrate them and let the liaisons know that they completed, and also making sure that they're connected a little bit more through not just celebration, but reinforcement of the learning. So that's the first step that we did through this pilot. I'm not sure if it's evolved since I've left or devolved since I've left, hopefully not. But that's basically what we decided to do, is just be more intentional. But we started it with an email, but also asked for a meeting and gave them a tool to do together. So kind of like a pre-work assignment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that answer, Julie.
Yeah.
We don't have time for any more questions, but I am going to give you a comment. Mindy Vance said, "Great job, Julie. Such a fantastic project and amazing presentation. Thanks for always working to make Ohio better." Okay, everyone, and we're back. So next up, we have Stephanie Otten. Stephanie is from the Ohio Department of Transportation. Stephanie, over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Stephanie Otten. I'm with the Ohio Department of Transportation, District 8. I'm a project manager in the district, meaning that I manage infrastructure projects such as roadways and sidewalks and shared use paths, improvement projects. So a little bit about me. I've worked in civil engineering for about 17 years. I am a civil engineer. I work in ODOT District 8, which is located in the southwest corner of the state. So we have responsibility over several counties in the area. The major city in Southwest Ohio is Cincinnati. My work experience is mostly public sector work, and I've been with ODOT the longest. I have a roadway design background, so that really means that I've spent a lot of time working on a computer in CAD software designing and detailing roadway improvements. As I've progressed through my career, I have shifted more towards project management, and professionally, I have a strong interest in active transportation, which I'll tell you a little bit about. So just to go into the details of the project with this class, first let's define what active transportation really is. So it is essentially traveling while moving your body. So that could mean walking, running, riding a bike, riding a scooter, skateboard, rollerblades, anything that's really traveling without a car, without a motorized engine. I know there's a little overlap nowadays with the shift towards electric bikes, but essentially you should be moving your body. And what is active transportation infrastructure? So that consists of roadways, sidewalks, shared use paths, bike lanes, any type of infrastructure that a person would use to travel while moving their body, to put it in simple terms. So who is this for? So at ODOT, we try to design for users of all ages, abilities, and incomes. And this is a very important thing. So I'll repeat it again: all ages, all abilities, all incomes. So you can see this graphic on the slide can give you a little bit of an idea of who that is. People of all ages, children, working adults, retired elderly, it's disabled people, everyone. It's very important that we provide infrastructure that is readily accessible by the whole population. There are many benefits of active transportation, as I have listed on this slide. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them, and you can kind of read through these and look at them on your own. So a few that I'd like to touch on would be mobility, connecting people to places. We have economic benefits that have been shown. When people are using active transportation and traveling at slower speeds, they tend to stop more frequently and notice their surroundings and shop locally. So that can really benefit a community. There's the health benefits, such as like physical fitness, mental health, that results in healthcare savings. And additionally, there's independence and freedom that I'd like to touch on. You know, a lot of our country has been developed in such a way where we only have access to one major mode of transportation, such as cars. And really, it can provide a lot of different people with independence and freedom to have access to more than one option, because everyone has different needs. And sometimes people are not able to drive a vehicle due to health conditions or maybe a cognitive impairment, vision issues. So it's beneficial to everyone to diversify our options. So active transportation, it's a great thing. So looking outside, where are all the people? Wait, do we have a problem? So looking at this slide, I have a then and now comparison. So on the left, we have back then, which this is a photo of historic city of Cincinnati. So this is in the downtown area, and transportation used to look a lot different. It was slower. It was easier and more comfortable to walk around. We didn't have a lot of like heavy, loud vehicles going by. And if you look at our built environment now, as the photo on the right shows, you can see that we've done a great job optimizing for fast cars. And we've kind of put active transportation, riding bikes, and walking to the wayside. There's still some space, but it's more challenging. Our cars have come a long way. We have trucks, and we've really reallocated space on our roadways to prioritize the vehicles. And it really makes an uncomfortable, unsafe situation for pedestrians and cyclists. So we do have a problem, and we can solve this problem. What we need is more connectivity, an increased level of comfort for the people that are getting out in the world and walking and biking around. And we need a safer environment for all abilities. So to solve this problem, we need planning documents for our communities to guide our decision making. So to describe my project, I've developed this project as part of this class, and we will be developing a high quality connected active transportation system by encouraging local agencies to apply for active transportation plan development. I know that's a mouthful. So essentially, local agencies meaning local governments. So ODOT, this project will develop a process for ODOT to reach out to local agencies, local governments, and encourage them to develop active transportation planning documents, essentially a sidewalk or and shared use path document, identifying where the paths go, where the best places to put them so that they connect people to places and whatnot. And in the grand scheme of things, this will improve mobility and accessibility for the community. So the 5 W's. So I'll just briefly go over this as well. You know, this is going to occur. This is ODOT District 8 and local governments. We are going to focus on increasing engagement with LPAs, which is local public agencies or local governments, to encourage them to apply. ODOT has an active transportation plan development assistance where we hire a consultant and we provide them free of cost to local governments to use. There is an application cycle yearly for this, and we have to filter through the applicants and award this. But that is one opportunity we have to assist the local governments. So this project's going to occur in District 8. It somewhat started in November of 23 with an email outreach, and I've developed a further plan, and this, I'll get into the details later, but it will reoccur yearly prior to the application deadline. And the reason we're doing this is to increase connectivity. We have a state and US bike route system that was adopted a few years ago. So if that's something you're interested in learning more about, feel free to Google it. There's lots of maps out there. Essentially, it's just a map of lines. Some of the infrastructure is aligned with existing paths, but a lot of it is just identifying a roadway where we would like to eventually have some active transportation networks. So a lot of work needs to occur to actually construct that system. The goals of the project. Looking at SMART goals here, I've identified 3 goals for my project. 1, and I'd say this is the meat of the project, is to identify a detailed process document outlining the steps for outreach. So this would include the process document and also providing some templates for emails, introductory meetings, agendas, and follow-up procedures. My next goal is to perform this outreach to 4 selected LPAs per year. That would be an in-person meeting with the local government employees to discuss our opportunities and the importance of creating planning documents, answer any questions, and provide some assistance if they need it to fill out applications. And then the last goal here is to develop a system for monitoring and evaluating the progress of the outreach efforts. Essentially, each year we look and see what were the results, what happened, is this working for us? Should we tweak it and do something a little bit different? So alignment with ODOT's strategic plan. I think this project aligns very well with our strategic plan. Our mission is to provide a transportation system that is safe, accessible, and well-maintained, positioned for the future. And really, this project focuses on that from the pedestrian and cyclist standpoint. We want to increase safety and accessibility on our system. And our vision is a world-class transportation system that improves the lives of all Ohioans. As you remember from our benefits slide, there are numerous benefits of active transportation. So this really does fit in well with ODOT's strategic plan. And I did copy this last sentence here from the strategic plan website. To serve all Ohioans, we work together as one. And we are really working with our local governments together collaboratively to help improve the transportation network. So I really do feel like we are meeting our strategic plan with this project. So to go over the process and methods that I've developed, I have some analysis slides using the tools from the class. So we've got a SWOT analysis here. So I'm not going to read over all the points that I have. You can kind of do that on your own, but a few that I want to touch on are that one of the strengths, ODOT has an active transportation plan development assistance program. One of the opportunities is that we have the state and US bike route system. So we have an opportunity here to encourage local governments to engage with planning to help develop that system, to make it a reality, to move it from lines on maps to something that exists in the real world. A weakness that can be kind of challenging is the potential for resistance to active transportation. You might find this surprising, but there's a lot of people out there that don't like walking and riding bikes, that think the roads should be for vehicles. And not everyone is supportive of this type of infrastructure. And under threats, we've got public resistance or opposition, somewhat similar to the weakness there. So we've got a few challenges, but we also have some strengths and opportunities that can help move this project forward. I've also performed a PESTEL analysis. Again, I'm not going to read all the points, but a few that I want to touch on. One, under law, is that Ohio is a home rule state. So what does that mean? This is somewhat unique. A lot of states are not set up this way, but Ohio is, where in a municipal government such as a city or a village, those governmental agencies have control and ownership of the state and US roadway systems. So that's not the case in all states, but in Ohio, it is. So ODOT does not have the power or authority to decide how those roads look in local governments. So that's why partnering with our local governments is very important here. This needs to be a locally driven effort. So we want to make sure to partner with the local governments, provide them with the information they need, and offer assistance where we can, because this will need to be a locally driven effort. So this is a timeline of where I've come so far going through this course. It initiated in November of 2023, and I've kind of gone through the steps here. I did send out some introductory emails to 5 LPAs last year to encourage them to apply for ATP assistance. And out of all of those, none of them submitted an application. And really that got me thinking that email is just not enough. We get so many emails. It's really hard to like get through all of them and to actually think this is something I want to spend more time on. So that helped shape my project and helped me decide that we need to have some in-person engagement. So this is the meat of my project right here. This is the process overview. So I've developed a detailed process document, and these are the steps that I've identified. So first, we're going to do a survey, creation and distribution. We will then send the survey out and get survey feedback. We're going to analyze that and filter through the results. We're going to rank the LPAs based on several different criteria. So one layer of filtering, for example, would be we want to prioritize LPAs that are on the state and US bike route system. So we'll do that. And then we can also look at other factors such as level of interest or like challenges that they have. And we could also look at census demographic information. We can use that information to decide which 4 we will be reaching out to that year. And every year it's going to be a different 4 so that we can kind of spread the wealth around. We will then do some outreach planning. We will schedule and hold in-person meetings, and then we will follow up and support them prior to the application deadline. So our anticipated impact with this is that we want to increase the number of LPAs applying for assistance. This results in improvement in our connectivity on our routes, increased walking and riding, which is good for people, and an increased safety and level of comfort. So this is my action plan and recommendations. I have thus far created these deliverables. I have a process document, a funding document, and a survey. So the process document here, I've got a little screenshot of it. This is for internal use at ODOT District 8. We have detailed steps to describe the objective of each step, actions, and timeline. We also have a one-pager that provides funding information on ODOT's active transportation plan development. This is something we can bring with us to an in-person meeting and hand to a person. It's a good resource, can also be emailed out. And then we've got a survey. So I've already taken a stab at developing our first survey here. So if you'd like to check it out, feel free to scan this with your cell phone. This is an awesome tool. It is works well on a computer. It works well on a cell phone. So it's very accessible. And this is really developed to gauge the interest of LPAs and to identify the barriers to participation. And that I am particularly interested in learning more about their barriers so that we can try to address them. So this will be developed with the step 1 of the process and then disseminated. So next steps. So we are going to review this process internally. I've already started that. I've reviewed it with our district planning engineer, and I'll be sending it up to our active transportation coordinator very soon for feedback. And then our next step would be implementation, which would probably be small scale for this year since we're limited on time, and full scale next year. And in the long term, once we have all these plans developed, we would eventually transition to focusing on assisting LPAs with securing construction funding. So my anticipated challenges is finding time for this project. Our workload at the district is quite high right now. We've had a lot of retirements and people moving around to new positions. So it's quite challenging to ask people to take one more thing on. You know, that can oftentimes induce stress. But I am confident that people will see the benefits of this and that we will follow through with the plan. Another challenge is, of course, finalizing these documents in time to implement this year. So in summary, I'm going to read this slide. By supporting our local governments in developing comprehensive active transportation plans, we can create a more balanced, redundant, inclusive, and sustainable transportation network. So again, this project aims to bridge that gap by informing and encouraging local governments to take advantage of funding opportunities, which ODOT offers, to provide them with the necessary tools and expertise to create actionable active transportation plans. So that is my presentation. I appreciate you spending time to listen to this and engage. So if you have any questions, I will take them now.
Thank you, Stephanie. What a great project. I mean, as a person who loves walking and bike riding, I fully support your mission. Mindy Vance asks, why could locals have some resistance to active transportation? Because it seems like it benefits everyone.
Yes, that's a good question. So in my experience, it really depends on the local way of thinking. And sometimes in townships, there's this thought process that transportation projects are funded by gas tax. And people that ride bikes and walk don't pay tax. So there are some townships that strongly feel that funds that come from a gas tax should not be used on other forms of transportation. So I have heard that from multiple townships. However, that is just not true. You are allowed to spend money on active transportation, and there are funding pots that are federal funds, state funds, specifically for active transportation. However, there are some people that just aren't comfortable with that or don't think it's important.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we have time for one more question. Are there other districts, specifically District 9, that have similar programs? That's from Amy Mason.
So this is something that is the active transportation plan development is statewide. So any municipality in the state can apply for those funds. However, I think one barrier is that a lot of local governments just don't know about it. Again, we're all busy, and sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And these things come out over email, but you might not be on the email list, or it's posted to the website, but you don't know to look at the website. So it is available statewide. I think one of the barriers is just learning that it exists.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. You have a couple great jobs in the chat. Rita Gallardo said you handled that glitch very well. Nice work. And Daryl Graves, who's a member of our board, also sent a message saying, great job, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
You did an awesome job, Stephanie. We thank you so much. Rob, do you have any final words?
Absolutely. Great job, Stephanie. You were cool under pressure there. And just like Kat said, we can redo it if you want to down the road. If not, no big deal. I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to make it perfect, we can. What I wanted to say is I want to use the OCPM platform to help you communicate and spread the word. So when you get to that local level, when you want to get to the communities, if there's anything we could do as a network or, connection point to help ODOT spread the word. And I echo Kat's support from being outdoors enthusiast and from an exercise perspective. So anything that we can help to spread the word, let us know. I also want to say that I just thought your tool utilization of all the PMA tools was like drop the mic. Like you put all of that stuff in there was just absolutely amazing. So great job on that, and appreciate your support. We love having ODOT in the program. So well done.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Stephanie, you did hit all the PMA project tools. So thank you for that. And I love that idea, Rob. Let's definitely support. So when you're ready, Stephanie, just send us whatever you can, and we'll get it out there for you to our network. Okay. So next up, we're going to have Amy Mason. Amy, I am going to promote you to panelist, and we will start you at exactly 9:25. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Next up, we have Amy Mason. Amy is from the village of Sardinia. Amy, over to you.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here to present this project. I am Amy Mason. As she stated, I'm the administrator of the village of Sardinia, which is in Brown County, Ohio. That's located about 45 miles east of Cincinnati. Just to give you an idea, it is a rural part of Ohio. I picked for my selection of my project here for this class was a cemetery restoration project. There's a lot of things that really led to me or inspired this project. One, it is the responsibility of my position. I had a unique beginning to my position as administrator just over 2 years ago, And I was hired in a council meeting, about midway through the council meeting. And by the end of that council meeting, the mayor had resigned. She had to do that because she had been charged with a crime of embezzling about $700,000 from her private employer. And she couldn't be mayor and accept a plea deal on that. So I came at a really transitional time in the village because of that. We had 4 new council members. One of those council members had to become the mayor, and we added another new council member. So at the time I began, we have out of 7 in council total between the mayor and council. 5 of them were pretty much brand new or less than 6 months. I was brand new. The person I was replacing had left a couple of months before. And so when I say I had to learn it was my responsibility, I really didn't know what my responsibilities were at that time. And looking through and just kind of reading the history of the village and the last 10 years of minutes before that time kind of gave me a view. And one of the things is that this is a big part of my job. Another thing that kind of inspired my project is during this early time of being the administrator, my dad passed away, and we knew that he was had a terminal disease when I took the job, but he passed away. And as I went through, picking a gravestone for him and a final resting place, it really did change my perspective to understand what people go through and what their expectations are for a cemetery. I love to mow grass. And so when you do a job and when you lead a department, I'm over the public works department. I feel it's important to understand what they do in their role and to get out there and do a little bit of it. And so as I was out mowing grass one summer in my job, I realized how bad this portion of the cemetery really was. This portion originates from the late 1700s, early 1800s. The village was established in 1830, so this is the original portion in the history of our village. I love history, so when I was back there mowing and realized the condition, it just really kind of started a fire in me to really do more research and find out why, what happened to this portion of history in Sardinia and what does it represent. When there's over 120 graves that are literally laying on the ground, disintegrating. And so as I'm back here, I had mowed it. I realized how bad it was. I'm researching what it takes to fix a gravestone because I know nothing about that. I had a chance meeting with Mark from Gravestone Transformations, and he was able to explain to me a lot of things about how to restore this cemetery. And really, he explained to me the WPA project, which I knew nothing about. But that will play into the role of this project quite a bit. And then all about the same time of this is all coming together. I'm beginning my class and needed a project. So we just kind of pulled all of that together to inspire this project and moving forward. Some of my responsibilities, when you look at the responsibilities, it was the care of the cemetery, the sale of the lots and the graves. And so that's what the job description says. And as I started to realize what went into the care of the cemetery, and I had read those last 10 years of minutes to kind of get an idea of my job, I realized there was a lot of complaints over the last few years as to the condition of the cemetery. And we had contracted the lawn care out, and that had been about 2 to 3 years before I started as the administrator. And part of that contract is 14 mowings and 7 weed trimmings from April to October. But I don't know if all of us here are from the state of Ohio, and you think about early spring, when you're only mowing grass every other week and you're only trimming it out once a month, it can't be good. And so it wasn't really an issue that we had a bad contractor. It was that we really weren't paying them enough or contracting them to do enough services. But when I looked at the cost of that contract to the village, it was $19,600 a year just for 14 mowings. And so I really felt like we could do something. We could take care of the cemetery much better, and we could do it at a much more cost effective. And so when you take the cemetery's care along with some street mowing that was being done in the village, we were paying $36,000 a year just to maintain grass, and we weren't maintaining it very well. And so my solution, we went ahead and bought 2 zero-turn mowers for the village at a cost of about $30,000, 0 interest over 24 months. So basically over 2 years, I've spent $15,000 a year to pay for the equipment, but in 2 years' time now, That equipment's completely paid for, and our costs have gone down quite extremely in taking care of the mowing, and we've done it much better. But through this process is kind of what led me to be out there mowing the grass and realize the condition of the cemetery. Like I said, my dad passed away. That really played a large part, because I think after that I had understood my perspective just really changed, and I realized how important that this is to the people who visit the cemetery, and how the expectation is that it's maintained well. And the historical aspect, when you look at this original portion of the cemetery, I started really looking at our records and what I had inherited in our record keeping of the cemetery. And I discovered we had nothing for this time frame. So when you look at this time frame of the cemetery, this original portion that goes back to the 1800s, I have no records whatsoever. And I discovered that about 100 years ago, there was a fire in the village history, and all of those records were lost. And so the importance of this is because when these stones disintegrate the rest of the way, when they are no longer readable, we have lost that entire history of the village. And so while I'm going through this process and trying to figure out how can we save these stones, how can we restore these stones, I really had a chance encounter with Mark Smith. And I went to Kroger's after work one day when I'd been working on this project a little bit, and I see this truck out in the parking lot. And so, like any good person nowadays who never carries around a pen and paper, I just took a picture of his truck right out there in Kroger's, and I gave him a call, and Mark met me down at the cemetery a couple of weeks later. And this is just a drawing and a map of our cemetery that I did not have until after I met with Mark. The first time we went down there and met, I told him, Mark, we don't have any records. Once this is gone, it's gone. We're not going to be able to know anything about this original portion of our history. And so Mark told me about the WPA process, and he said, there's a map about your cemetery somewhere, probably in Brown County. And so he sent me researching. I had no idea what the WPA of 1935 was, but it stands for a Works Progress Administration that President FDR generated in 1935 after the Great Depression. During this time, according to history.com, about 20% of America was unemployed. And so this project was a way to employ Americans to do work for America. And so most of the projects of the WPA were to build roads that we still drive on every day today. They built a lot of bridges during this time, some hospitals, schools. That was the main focus of this WPA process. But one small portion of this program was for old records, to make records of anything that could be historically valuable. And so they contracted out to have every single cemetery in the United States in 1935 to be mapped, and to have all of those soldiers where they were buried to be documented in that mapping. And so I don't know if you can tell, but on this map here, these little bitty black marks here represent the grave of a soldier. And so in this original portion of the cemetery that we're working to restore, we have 19 soldiers buried. And 3 of those soldiers are from the War of 1812, and 16 of those soldiers are from the Civil War here in America. And so when you take this map, this really gave me my first reference point as to how many bodies potentially are buried in this section of the cemetery. The only ones that were marked were the cemetery, or were the soldiers, but you have all these other elements that you can see where they're marked. Interesting history that I really didn't realize, but in these older portions of the cemetery, they were not divided out the way that we see more current cemeteries. They're much closer together. This is before vaults existed, and so they would have just been buried in pine boxes. And they're usually only 6 to 7 foot apart, whereas now a standard grave and vault is 8 foot long, so they're about 10 feet apart. And so there's a lot more people buried in the smaller section in the cemetery than you would think, just based on some of those historical data. One of the things I found really interesting on this map of Sardinia, or the cemetery, is here that the World War is mentioned here, because there wasn't a World War II at the time this was created. There was just one World War, and so it was just documented that way. But when Mark told me about this, I actually went down to our Office of Vital Records in Brown County, and I asked them, I said, do you have any WPA mapping of cemeteries? And they pulled out this great big book. And when I say it's huge, it was huge. And they had special gloves on, and they opened this book up, and we're about page 107 or 108. You can find our map. And they also brought out a ladder, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with the ladder, but this book is so big. Obviously, you can't photocopy it. It's original from its time frame. But you can get up on a ladder and get like aerial views. And so when I went to Georgetown, this is the first records that we've had of Sardinia, of this cemetery in years now that we have on the office. And it really helped us to work through this project. So when you look at this, I find this really interesting when I look at a comparison of this map from the WPA process to just an aerial Google view maps. You can really see the outline of this original portion of the cemetery is still very much like it was back in 1935. And one of the things that I learned when I met with Mark, who's the specialist on cemeteries in Ohio and does a lot of work with many historical cemeteries, is this patch here in this area right in here. It doesn't look really big, but this point up in the corner in this area here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but hopefully you can. This portion, there's no graves of any kind. There's no markers of any kind, rather. And so I thought that was unique with the fact that this has over 400 and some markers, and they're all really crammed in, that you have this big portion of open land where it doesn't appear that anybody's buried. And when meeting with Mark, he really gave me a historical aspect that most cemeteries had what they called a potter's field in the back corner. And this is where anybody who was too poor to afford to be buried would be buried, or any time back in the 1800s in America, if it was anybody who was of African-American descent or Black, they would have been buried in that portion because they would not have been allowed in the main portion. And so as I went through and I realized the significance of my job and how important it is to restore this portion of the cemetery, I really also want to make just really careful, not only to restore the graves that we have, but to pay special reverence to that area there and to maintain it very well, because it most likely represents a significant portion of history. Also, we just don't have any markers to prove it. This part of the cemetery would have just had wooden crosses marking a grave in its original time. And of course, all of those have been lost to history through time. Here's just an example of some of the restorations that we have done. Phase 1 of this project was to hire Mark to restore the first 37 graves. We have lots of phases through this process, but this is actually happening right now. So it's taken about a year to get to this point, but he's been out there the last couple of weeks. I've been out there almost every day this week and last week looking at his restoration project. But this is an example of what it looked like last fall. We have many graves like this where they're just toppled over. And this is a picture of what it looks like right now as it's been repaired by him. And when you look at this one here is a grave that's from 1882. Last fall, you can see it's just kind of crumpled. It's in multiple pieces here, just kind of laying over. These are damaged often by mowing. So you can see the discoloration around the top of it because the mowers hit it over the years as it's just laid on the ground. And this is what it looks like today now that he's repaired it. You can see the name much clearer. You can see the information. It was from 1882. Here's one more example of a grave, original condition, that you find it just literally laying on the ground in the cemetery. What you can read from it is basically you can read the name David across the top. You can't read much more than that. But now we have it repaired and it's back up in its original resting place. One of the last things that Mark will be doing before he leaves the cemetery this month is he will be treating each one of the graves that he restored with a special treatment. It's basically will eat away at the biological growth on the graves there. And so in the next 1 to 2 months, we'll be able to see these and actually read the majority of the information on there. And so that's a whole nother phase of trying to restore and document all of the information on these gravestones as we restore them. And so the timeline for my project really, started back in June of 2023 when I started talking to council about the need to restore the cemetery. From there, I met with Mark, the contractor. He informed me of the WPA project. And so Fall, we were able to pick those first 37 graves to be repaired, and we were able to map that out based on that documentation. We've broken this project up into multiple phases because this isn't something we're going to be able to afford to do in 1 year, nor could I get the specialist in. He's got a waiting list of 1 to 2 years long. So even be able to get him in here to repair any more than 30 a year would be quite difficult. He's one of only a few people in the state of Ohio that does this level of restoration. So we broke this up earlier this year into multiple different phases, and we've sought additional funding. So I submitted this I submitted this project to 3 or 4 different grant processes through the state of Ohio for additional funding through the Ohio's capital budget. And unfortunately, in June, we found out that we didn't make any of those grant cycles. So we didn't get any additional funding from any additional sources this year, but we are going to be able to complete phase 1 this year. So all of phase 1 will be completed by the end of this month, and it will cost the village $10,750 to complete this phase. So as we look at additional phases and things that I learned through this process of the Academy 12, I originally was going to really work with our historical society to help fund phase 1 of the restoration. My idea, which each one of the graves cost anywhere from about $250 to repair to about $350. And so my idea originally was to get 36 businesses, families, or organizations to adopt a grave and to basically raise the money for phase 1 so that we then would have money for phase 2. But when I met with the Historical Society, I discovered, actually, I didn't even know, they are already working on a section of the cemetery up in the front part, and they're restoring some things there. So they've done several fundraisers this summer to restore that and to finish funding what they already started. They've also done a lot of funding over the years, and they restored the entire entrance to the gates of the cemetery back in 2014. So I really transitioned my original game plan, and we did not do any fundraising for this phase because I didn't want to overshadow what they were already doing. And I think that they were a little bit skeptical that we would be able to actually save any of the original portion of the cemetery. So I'd like to be able to go back to them next year after this first phase is done and be able to show them the before and after of what we've been able to do. There's other organizations that have agreed to help me in the future. We have a not-for-profit here in Sardinia called Sardinia Hope and Promise, and they are going to help us fund some of phase 2 moving forward. And so those are just a few of the things that we're still doing. Of course, like I said, the timeline, the phase 1 is going to be replaced or repaired or completed by the end of this month. Phase 2 to 4 could take an additional 2 to 4 years. Because there's about 120 graves that are completely on the ground that need repair out of that 400 or so that's in that category. And then the last phase is really more in the front of the cemetery, right along Sardinia Martystown Road. The sidewalks there are in just terrible condition. And so that portion of the repairs I'm sending to different CBDG grant funding and things like that through the state to try to get the sidewalks repaired and replaced so that just makes it nice in our community and makes it easy for people to walk to the cemetery. The total cost for each one of these phases as we move forward, I'm going to estimate to be around $150,000 based on phase 1 and what we're looking at for the completion of the sidewalks. So that's really my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Hi, Amy. I just wanted to jump in. I know that typically Kat goes first, but I just wanted to jump in because I'm so excited for your project and also just for your participation. First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to our partners at Ohio University and Jay Johnson and Deanna Clifford, because I know that you heard about the Public Management Academy and were originally part of their cohort and their organization. And you took the leap of faith to join us for the PMA part. So for our friends at OU, thank you very much for the recommendation and encouraging Amy to join us. I got a couple statements. I don't have any questions because I think you dropped the mic. But I got a couple things that I really found were interesting. First of all, I love the fact, a lot of times, we talk about being up here in a 50,000 foot view, literally, or looking at things from a 30,000 foot view. And we say, stay out of the weeds, stay out of the weeds, in parentheses. But I love the fact that the analogy you used about actually cutting the grass and getting out there to see exactly what's going on gave you a different perspective and appreciation for what the shape of the cemetery was, and then how you really tie that back to your personal story. That was very emotional, and I just think it was awesome because what I tell our team is that, the state of Ohio is like the heart of it all. And what I want for OCPM is for us to put the heart in the heart of it all. And so I think that came across really well with your presentation. I think that that demonstrates your empathy and desire to honor the past and the history, but also, keep it and retain that for the future so that the residents and the citizens in your area can respect that, and also to respect those that are resting in peace there. Other part about your project, though, that I just love the practical application of it, that you're literally mowing the grass and that you said, wait a minute, we can do better. The fact of you're investing into those machinery, those lawnmowers or tractors or whatever, the zero turn equipment, saved a lot of money for the village. And that's a very smart, astute move on your part. I want to say that that was pretty sweet in the sense of, you're going to put that money out on an annual basis, and you really weren't getting a quality of service or impact and outcomes that you wanted. So I really want to say great job, because I think that when we look at the Public Management Academy, especially when we talk about the Lean Ohio Boot Camp, we're talking about making things more efficient, effective. So I like the fact that you looked at it from a monetary perspective and saying, not only can we get a bigger bang for our buck, but I need to be a good steward of our money. So I wanted to shout out, those are a few things that really popped off here in the presentation from you. So I wanted to say congratulations, and I just loved it. I guess the only question I have as far as like, future plans for the cemetery. I know that the Historical Society is taking the lead, but do you have anything else in the works down the road to make sure that that continues, or how you can partner with them moving forward so this project gets completed? On anything else down the road that you might look at if some of the stuff doesn't work the way
Yeah, I think we got some healing to do in the village. Like I said, I came in at a time where there was just a lot of division. And so I think, just giving it some time for people to realize what we're doing. I think the Historical Society is starting to get a little bit excited about it right now. But I'm also looking at more of a state level historical society. There's a lot of things on the state level that can get additional funding. Sardinia is very important to the Underground Railroad, and we had a lot of that come through here. And one of the ministers in town was over that, and so there's a couple of historical buildings in town where the Underground Railroad comes up into that building, and that's right near the cemetery. And so I think that there's some additional funds that we can look at just from a historical standpoint that Ohio finds very important. And I'm really trying to tap into that and make those connections for the future.
That's fantastic. I just want to say one more thing, and I'll pass it over to Kat, is that the partnership between the Cleveland State and Ohio University is that we both cover the urban and the rural aspects of the state of Ohio, because we obviously have both of those. And I think this is a great way, like the initial kickoff for that, to really demonstrate how we can have an impact across all 88 counties and across the entire landscape of the state of Ohio. So thank you, Amy, for being our very first champion for that. Okay, Kat, over to you.
Hey, thank you. Amy, I also just wanted to offer condolences for the loss of your father. And I just wanted to say that that's pretty awesome. That's a part of your inspiration for the project. It really hit me. So thank you for sharing that with us. Sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional, but anyways, it was an amazing project. And I actually have a really old graveyard in my community. And I was just wondering, like, might you be willing to share your project with other communities that might need to kind of echo this whole project?
I'd be willing to share it more on a larger scale, just locally, because I want it to be seen as only positive. And to get to where I got to this project, you had to take the positive and the negative. I want to be careful with that we just do it as a highlight. because I did come in at a time where things were not great in our local government, in our local community. And, you know, when I took that contract away, that was from our neighbor there in the community. And so it didn't go over really well because, you know, they depended on that funds, but it really was what was best for the village. And so, you know, with every positive, you have some people that see it as negatively. So you want to be cautious in that. But absolutely, I found this to be so interesting, and I learned so much about old graveyards. The whole reason a lot of these stones break down is because in the 1800s, we had the railroad that came through town, and lime was very much available. Limestone was what was available. So they made a lot of these old stones out of limestone, and it doesn't hold up very well over time. But 100 years ago, they didn't know that, you know, so that's why we're in the condition. A lot of these old graveyards through Ohio, same thing, they're along the railroad lines, and that's what they had available to use, so.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I have a couple questions I want to get over to you. Let's see here. Daryl Graves, who's one of our board members, is on right now, and he wanted to know, are there any families with relatives in the cemetery who are interested in potentially assisting with your fundraiser?
I think there are, the Purdy family is very, like, you can find them throughout the entire cemetery in all portions. They're, early establishers here in this community. And, the road here is called Purdy Road. So, you know, I've, met with, one of the older Purdy representatives, that actually is the vice president for the Historical Society. And she's really starting to get excited about the project. And I think we're really highlighting, there's a significant portion of Purdy's in that back portion that needs to be restored. So I do think that that's going to be a help.
And you know, I have somebody on here who says, "Great job. I'm the commissioner who oversees 12 City of Cleveland owned cemeteries. If there's any information we can give you, we'd be happy to help. We have several historic cemeteries."
Awesome.
Like there's someone on the call here that would be interested in potentially giving you some information. Do you want me to connect you?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, great. You know, whoever that is, thank you so much for that comment. If you could please put in the chat your contact information, I will pass that along to Amy. And then it looks like we have time for one more. Okay, let's see here. There's so many good questions. All right, we're gonna ask Julie Finnegan's question. Have you generated awareness/support from your state legislators to try to identify and obtain state funding? I know that you said that you did not receive a grant this cycle, but it might help you if you haven't gotten one yet. Great job and fantastic project.
I have connected with Senator Johnson and his office. You know, they can only take so many projects. And so even though they did decline it this year, I was able to talk to them in depth about it. And I do think there is some future funding, hopefully, because I think he liked the project. And I've had good connections with Senator Johnson here in this community for the last 6 or 7 years with my previous employer also. So I think we're going to be able to find some funding as we move along.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. You did a really great job. Fantastic project. Okay, and we're back. So next up, we have Rita Gallardo Walnick, and Rita is from Cuyahoga Community College. Rita, over to you.
Hi, Kat. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob and Kat. And good morning, everyone. Thank you to the PMA team and the OCPM PMA team. I never would have thought that I would be so involved emotionally in the huge issue of immigration. And because of this project presentation and this whole journey of PMA, I have invested research, key informant interviews, and this proposed project for almost a year. And so I am very grateful to PMA and OCPM. Just a bit of an inspiration of this project. I am Rita Gallardo Walnick, and I have a Doctor of Public Administration from the Philippines. And I have been a student of various universities in the Netherlands, in Hawaii. And I've only been here for 3 years. I got married to a native Ohioan, and hence I am a lawful permanent resident. Before coming here, I have a 20-year career with the public sector, working for the Senate of the Philippines, Office of the President of the Republic of the Philippines, managed an advocacy cooperative, and taught at universities on research, on econ, and public administration. That said, let me start my presentation by reading a part of my introduction in my paper. Murillo asks, have you ever met a taxi driver who in a previous life was a doctor, engineer, or lawyer in their home country? Have you ever wondered why this individual is now driving a cab for a living? Similarly, the staff of the Community Refugee and Immigration Services in Columbus raised questions during a virtual interview with a researcher, pondering why a medical doctor from Afghanistan now serves as an employment counselor in Ohio. As personal introspection sets in, one might wonder why a doctorate holder with 2 decades of experience spanning research, policy, and management was unemployed for a year and remains underemployed after almost 2 years of job seeking in Ohio. Now, the topical outline of my presentation. And I won't be, I'm showing this just to show to everyone that I will not touch in detail the following: detailed design framework, the slide on detailed design framework, the PESTEL analysis framework, the detailed deliverables, and the timeline, just to save time. So what is the issue? The issue is underutilization of immigrants in the United States, underutilization of skilled immigrants, unemployment, underemployment in the United States. In Ohio, this translates to 53 million in lost annual state and local taxes, according to literature. And in the United States, this is actually 10.2 billion annually lost tax revenues. So the blueprint or the design plan is to create an online platform for these professional LPRs for networking, to build a space to develop LPRs, assess, match, mentor, and connect, to target professionals that have substantial resumes and higher educations earned outside of the United States, and to help build synergy of like-minded people in Ohio. So the protocol, how did we come to this? We employed literature review, survey using SurveyMonkey, observations, and we interviewed nonprofit, government, Ohio Business for Immigration Solutions, and the academia, both here in Cleveland and Columbus. So the scope of the project. We will be talking about immigration and what specific sub-issue of immigration. It's about employment, unemployment, and underutilization of these immigrants. We will be talking about immigrant visa holders, and I want to overstress that because there are a lot of those immigrant visa holders in the United States. And I will go back to this just so to define what are these immigrant visa holders. We will be talking about skilled immigrants. These immigrants are very much sought after in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, in United Kingdom, and Germany, and other OECD countries. So basically, the scope of the project is lawful permanent residents, employment, and professional. These are skilled, and the literature interchangeably use these terms: skilled, college educated, college graduates. So as I've said earlier, what part of the immigrants are we talking about? We are talking about lawful permanent residents. These are not J1 visa holders. These are not H1B visa holders. These are green card recipients and are non-citizens who are lawfully authorized to live permanently within the United States. LPRs may accept an offer of employment without special restriction, own property, receive financial assistance at public colleges and universities, and join the armed forces. They also may apply to become a U.S. citizen. And the next bullet, the third bullet, I want to underscore this because one of my key informants said that some of the HR personnel that he was talking to thought that LPRs need sponsorship. LPRs do not need employee sponsorship. And according to the DHS, there are 6 main classifications of LPRs. So the project importance. We talk about underemployment, unemployment, underutilization of college-educated immigrants. And there's a lot of estimates out there, 2 million at least for the period 2009-2013. There's brain waste associated with these unemployment among these immigrants. And then again, as I've said earlier, there's economic cost of underemployment. The barriers, we've learned through our research, there are institutional barriers. There's really non-recognition of qualifications, of foreign qualifications and licenses. Social, the obvious discrimination. Personal, lack of professional network. And employer, a survey over 4,000 skilled immigrants found that 40% of immigrants said their employers did not recognize foreign work experience. And 35% of skilled immigrants said that their employers did not recognize foreign credentials. And I want, again, to underscore this because 2 of my key informants said that, and they are lawful permanent residents and now U.S. citizens, said their mentors, while they were building a career for 15 years, said at the start, never to put in your resume your credentials or your work experience outside of the United States. Immigrants in Ohio. We've learned that there are few nonprofit organizations in Ohio working for lawful permanent residents. And the sad part is they are 95% serve the basic needs. And I've only met one who is trying to serve very few professional lawful permanent residents. There's also differing immigrant population data out there comparing DHS and various nonprofit organizations. And again, there's an economic cost of underemployment of professional immigrants here in Ohio. As I said earlier, there's at least 53, more or less 53 million US dollars total for gun, state and local taxes. So the design framework. Because of our sort of grounded theory approach in literature review, survey, and then we have the key informants. We created like, okay, this is the problem. Now we are analyzing, researching and analyzing, and then we proposed the project. And then we are I'm thinking of another research and analysis specifically on these immigrants in Ohio. And well, this is basically the detailed design framework. And I just want to say that the 1 and 2 are done. We are still in number 3 and number 4, and we are thinking of doing the proposed project in 2025 in January. Results. Well, this basically comprises the number 2 of the previous slide. And this slide basically shows that what was written in the related literature was validated by survey, and the next slide will also tell us that it's validated by key informants. So using SurveyMonkey, results show that 70% of professional LPRs did not have organizations that help them network for employment, and 30% said their school helped them because they enrolled. And so the school helped them connect to these organizations. As to what services should be offered, they said networking opportunities, job training and referrals, resume writing, and mentoring. Again, this just validates, this is from the key informants, this just validates the barriers, social and individual barriers. It's rare to see an organization servicing professional LPRs in Ohio. And then from the key informants, there's limited knowledge on hiring immigrants. Well, we used Pestle to help us assess the factors affecting the professional LPRs. And the political and legal are very obvious. We have the immigration policies and regulations, government initiatives, immigration laws and policies, employment laws and regulations. And then also in the social aspect, the obvious, there's gonna be discrimination. And again, going back to the economic waste, and also, and this was my husband my husband is also very much involved now into this project, and he's a lawyer, and I always engage with the conversation with him, especially on establishing a nonprofit. And this was his point, the difference in temperature, because it could impact cultural clothing and identity. SWOT analysis. The strengths would be, this would try to help address the existing gap. This is also very much consistent with federal and local initiatives, such as the DEI initiative. The weakness is dependency, obviously, of external factors. You have the economy, the job market, regulatory changes. Opportunities, well, there's presence of models in Europe, and I have been in contact with my close friend when I was studying in the Netherlands on how Netherlands have created a more professional market for these skilled immigrants. Threats, obviously, you have the barriers, you have the economic downturn, and cyber threats, because this will be an online platform. The proposed big goals. So the big goals is we intend to address brain waste associated with LPRs, help address the economic cost of underemployment, help address the personal related barriers such as LPRs' unfamiliarity with the labor market and practices, assist potential employers with meeting their diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Deliverables. Deliverable 1 is to engage stakeholders that deal with immigrants in Ohio. 2 is the obvious creation of online platform, and we have been talking to one. And I am hoping that we would be able to talk to another one to design, host, and obviously we need a communications network for this platform. And the third is to create a not-for-profit, and hopefully January of 2025. And I've been talking to a lawyer who is my husband and who is also very much involved in this. Deliverable 4 is to seek volunteers as mentors, coaches, and referrals. Deliverable 5 is to connect to professional LPRs in Ohio. And this is just to show us that we used the SMART framework with our deliverables, just so we know we can be on track. We can measure it, and it's going to be time bound. Again, this is to show that we did a project timeline, and we are thinking of implementation by January of 2025. The more long-term proposed timeline would be, 2025 would be the creation of the nonprofit to identify and engage corporate partners. Although we have been in that, we're trying to engage immigration referral partners and funding, and hopefully place candidates. The mission of the project is to create a platform where professional lawful permanent residents, or LPRs, network and access services to connect to potential employers to reduce unemployment and underemployment, reduce brain waste, and help LPRs overcome the fear of the unknown, as well as help promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and help grow the economy of the United States of America. Action plan to create an online platform, synergy with other players, connect with LPRs in Ohio, create a not-for-profit to operate the platform, register volunteers, coaches, mentors, and other professionals and stakeholders, connect with business sector and nonprofits for DEI initiative, and to provide services. Services such as mentoring, personality assessments, resume writing, assistance, and coaching. Impact: employment, optimized brain utilization, tax maximization, accessible services, consistent with federal, local, and business initiatives. And to end this presentation, I'd like to read this from the University of Virginia Miller Center. And this was in 2012, and this still holds true today. The United States has long been the leading destination for immigrants. Both high and low skilled and the foreign-born have played an important role in this country's cultural, economic, and political life. Foreign-born engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs, for example, make significant contributions to U.S. innovation and competitiveness, yet current immigration policy makes it increasingly difficult for skilled immigrants to enter and remain in the country. And hopefully, this nonprofit will be able to help at least a little in trying to convince skilled immigrants to remain in the country. Thank you very much, and I'm open for your questions.
Wow. That was incredible, Rita. Really nice job. And you know, your passion for this project clearly shows. Really, really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Stay focused on your goal. You're gonna achieve amazing things for your career and help probably thousands of folks, generations of folks moving forward. So I'm gonna stop because I will start crying if I continue on. Kat, over to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Rob. All right, I have a couple comments for you, Rita, and a question in here. Daryl Graves from our board said, excellent work, Rita. And Scott Howard, who you met earlier, also a board member, said, what a fantastic presentation, so powerful and so very timely. It is truly sad how little we tap into this reservoir of talent and knowledge. Agreed, Scott. Okay, we have one question for you, Rita. Stephanie Otten, do you have any thoughts on how to get politicians and other leaders to champion your work?
Oh, wow. We really tried. My husband, and I won't name names, we tried to engage, and it's not easy. I'm not familiar with the politics in Columbus, but we did try to reach for a senator, and who's his friend, who's my husband's friend, his family's friend, but it's not easy. And so we did try, but we will keep on trying. And I am engaged, and I'm currently a Global Rising Fellow, and Joe Simperman is a politician, was a council member in Cleveland, and he's all for lawful permanent residents and the skilled immigrants in Ohio. So yes, and again, I would like to thank Rob. I know I said thank you to PMA and OCPM. Thank you so much, because I got so emotionally involved and really like tried to figure out how my, focus my brain into coming up with this project. So thank you again so much. And thank you so much for your kind words, Rob. Truly appreciate, and the others who did comment. Thank you.
I do have one more comment too from Crystal, who's also a board member. And Crystal, I actually would like to bring you up just to say hello after Rita wraps up here. Crystal said, amazing job, well needed. Thank you for putting light on this issue that many of us fail to recognize. Again, thank you so much for your hard work on this project, Rita. It was an excellent PMA project, and we can't wait to see how this all pans out. We're here to help you any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
It was amazing. Yes, so everyone, real quick, I am Crystal Franklin. I am the Director of K-12 Computer Science Education at the beautiful Cleveland State University in downtown Cleveland. I am so happy to join you all this morning. To all the panelists and everyone who was enrolled in PMA, good job. I know this was a labor of love. I know it was tiring. I know it was a lot of things, but like you all, it pushed me into an area that maybe I wasn't comfortable with or I hadn't thought about when I did my project. And I'm just so grateful for having the experience, and I know you all are too. So I will be here for the rest of the presentations. I'm excited to see and hear about what you all have done and to get an opportunity to read some of the final projects. So again, thank you all for your amazing work and all of the things you have done to get to this point. And I am excited to see what the end's gonna be, as my grandmother used to say. So let's get her done and just stay connected to OCPM too.
All right. So next up, we have a team of presenters. We have Yana Maxwell, Brenda Branch, Eric Turk, and Anna Delgado, and they are from the city of Cleveland. All right, team, over to you.
Okay. This project is about the weld shop, mastering every step, step by step. Our team is a collaborative effort, including 4 team members from the same department with different functions. I would like to introduce our team. My name is Yana Maxwell, and I am the Legislative and Contract Liaison for the Department of Public Works. I have been with the City of Cleveland for over 24 years.
Hi, I'm Eric Turk. I'm a district unit leader with the division with street maintenance. I've been employed with the City of Cleveland for over 20 years.
Hi, I'm Anna Delgado. I oversee FMLA, Accident and Safety, and I've been employed with the City of Cleveland over 28 years.
Good morning. My name is Brenda Branch, and I am the Assistant to the Director of Public Works, and I have been employed with the City of Cleveland for over 19 years.
The lack of detailed instructions for job execution places undue strain on employees who are expected to perform their roles effectively without adequate guidance. The focus of our project is to address critical needs for standardized operating procedures within the weld shop. We suggest that the establishment of clear step-by-step instructions are imperative for ensuring a high standard of performance and service delivery. The lack of detailed instructions there are additional issues, but we have to focus on one issue at a time. Are there any step-by-step processes for my position? No. Is there anyone I can mirror to learn my position? No. The City of Cleveland just hired an employee in my department who has no experience. She has the same job title as I do. I was asked to train her, and she makes $10,000 more than I do. This doesn't sit well with me.
More issues that we discovered during our research were lack of communication between divisions. Every division works individually and not as a team. And resident concerns were not always priority.
Some other issues that I noticed are all of my employees are full-time and have been employed for a long time. As a result, they have several weeks of vacation, but they are only able to use that time off during the summer via department policy. They're seasoned, slower workers, and as a result, production takes a longer time for completion of assignments, and the quality of work is not that good. The onboarding process is slow, and as a result, current employees react with poor behavior and bad work practices. This behavior is often overlooked so that daily tasks can be completed.
Lastly, we found that the job posting and job descriptions do not accurately reflect the day-to-day responsibilities in regards to hiring and onboarding process.
Our first goal is encouragement for employees to implement step-by-step processes for improved efficiency. Our second goal is to create a seamless operation that produces quality work for the City of Cleveland and its residents. Our third goal is to delegate the workload, which is a key component of successful management and team.
Civil service titles versus actual titles. Our titles are not overview of our actual job duties and responsibilities.
My title is Assistant Administrator. I request legislation, solicit requests for proposals, schedule committees for approval and contract requests. But my civil service title states that under general direction, I perform major, daily, and project/program-based administrative duties, recommends and administers divisional and policy and procedures.
My title is a project coordinator. I work as a liaison within the department for FMLA requests, walk employees through the process when they are injured and need to return back to work, monitor Bureau of Workers' Compensation claims to ensure employees remain in compliance with the city policies and procedures. But My civil service title states that under general direction, I provide technical assistance, prepare financial and narrative reports, also designs and implements and monitor procedures, utilize the program evaluation, which I do not do. District Unit Leader. Eric Turk of the Well Shop is a district unit leader in the Department of Public Works, Division of Street Maintenance, may have different duties than a district unit leader in the Department of Public Utilities. The employees all work for the city of Cleveland, yet their civil service titles does not reflect their actual job duties. Job description. As a district unit leader, the Division of Streets Well Shop in the Department of Public Work, Eric Turk's civil service title, job description does not reflect his actual job duties when reviewing the City of Cleveland's website.
My actual job duties are consistent with the job duties of a fleet manager. So during that time, I maintain vehicles to expand or enhance the fleet, order urgent or emergency repairs as needed, ensure all fleet members have proper licensure and up-to-date training, monitor drivers and ensure adherence to schedules, proper driving practices, train employees on safety equipment, policy, regulations, and procedures. I provide reports to management on budgeting, schedules, maintenance, and fleet progress, develop methods to decrease costs and improve efficiency. I also attend special event steering committees. I am the point person for the Division of Streets, and my shop builds and repairs snowplow blades. And I believe we are the only municipality, probably in the United States, that has their own fabrication team. I also do purchase, install, and repair of the guardrails throughout the city of Cleveland. My welders maintain all the welding equipment and repair and conduct inspections. I also have a crew that does all of the cleaning of the graffiti throughout the city of Cleveland, and also a crew that does tree lawn restoration throughout the city of Cleveland. So also throughout my day, I have to enforce HR policies and procedures with my employees and resolve a lot of building issues. So I work directly with property management, with the Division of Property Maintenance, and but I also do all of the purchasing of supplies and handle all of the inventory and the distribution of all of those supplies that I purchased for the division. So my role in the fleet management involves maintaining a critical equipment status report for various seasons throughout the street division. These reports track the operational status of vehicles, indicating whether they are currently running or on or off the route for service. And here's how I manage this process. So I manage it pretty much through data collection with sweeper reports, and this is how I am able to determine for vehicle borrowing, but this process requires timely reporting, accurate reporting, leadership updates. I also conduct toolbox talk safety meetings, attend steering committees, which is like a committee where people come to present their special events for events that they want to conduct with the city, attend commissioner meetings on Wednesdays, district unit leader meetings probably on Wednesdays, and that steering committees also happen on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays are pretty stacked up for me. I coordinate daily fleet counts with motor vehicle maintenance, which is another division under Public Works. But also, and sometimes especially in storm situations, I have to provide real-time data because I may get a call at noon for a report for something that may have been up in the morning, but now it's down at 11 o'clock because of a breakdown. I also do all of our employee timesheets and other issues that they may have as far as sick time and vacation time and missed swipes and other types of payroll issues that they may have. So here is an example of what I would send off in the morning, which is I use an Excel spreadsheets to send off our sweeper status reports. The streets down list, which is just a list of all of the vehicles that are down that I send off to our commissioners and directors, our summer equipment status, which I send off to our operations department. And those consist of our hot boxes, which are boxes that carry our asphalt that we use to fill potholes, our leaf backs, our street sweepers. Those are vehicles that I report throughout our summer months. Snow removal vehicles are vehicles that I pretty much report for throughout the winter months. But I list all of our Division Street vehicles that are, this is just a report that was for the vehicles that were down on July 19th. So this is just a quick example of that. But I do send out our sweeper status report to all of our district unit leaders so that they can work amongst themselves to see where they need to borrow a vehicle from each other in the mornings, because maybe one went down and they need two to get their work done, and they can borrow from each other to make that happen without always having to contact me, or they can make that move amongst themselves. So this is the my equipment master list that I use in the mornings. This is an Excel spreadsheet that I developed, and it's a book with many sheets. The master sheet here talks back, well, the following sheets talk back to the master sheet, and then I'm able to sort and filter that master sheet. I've color coded different vehicles as far as our single axle trucks, our tandem axle trucks, leaf backs, and so forth, sweepers, to provide these when I'm asked to provide certain parameters, like if the commissioner calls and asks how many sweepers do we have up, I'm able to even just visually color code it for myself to see how many vehicles that we have up in that capacity that he's asking for. So these are just a quick way that I can sort and filter to get these real-time reports out on a timely basis.
Our mission is to create step-by-step processes should Turk, which is the district leader, if he's absent from the well shop. Our vision is to present standard operating procedures for the well shop in the hope that the department will follow this action by creating departmental-wide processes for each job description. This gives us the opportunity to enhance efficiency, reduce errors, and implement manageable and actionable steps.
Our step-by-step processes guides us on how to perform our jobs, helps us to achieve goals, remain compliant with policies, procedures, and regulations. It's great for cross-training new employees that come on board, and it keeps us aware of work processes when an employee is on vacation, vacates a position, or the process needs to be updated. They are essential for optimizing operation and making sure that we are following policies and procedures. They ensure consistency, maintain quality, keeps us compliant with regulations, and promotes efficient resource management in the well shop. They allow us to achieve organizational goals and improve the overall performance. Here are our SMART objectives. Our overall quality of service helps us employees understand what they are doing in their field of work, step-by-step expertise to excel in their role, provide quality service through various operations for the residents of City of Cleveland, and then our political stakeholders is the mayor and Cleveland City Council. All have a reputation to improve the quality of life for their constituents and may risk their political career as an elected official to be voted out of office. Here's our objectives and goals, SMART goals. Specific, this creating guidelines on how to perform tasks when an employee vacates their position, staying up to date on process and equipment needed for daily operation. Our measurable are goals to manage tasks efficiently and provide high quality results in a timely manner. Our achievables are reforming procedures, relevant to ensure accurate and consistent workplace best practices. And then time bound is to have workplace guidelines in place prior to Eric Turt's absence as a district unit leader, manager, fleet manager.
Our strengths are structure, providing clear guidance, training and onboarding. It will be easier to train new team members or onboard new staff with clear documented processes. Our weaknesses are complexity. Detailed processes can sometimes be difficult to implement and time consuming. It's hard to train while completing daily work tasks. Our opportunities are benchmarking. Using processes as a benchmark can help identify best practices and areas for improvement. And last, our threats are resistant to change, which impacts the acceptance and effectiveness.
Without having standard operating processes, there will be disadvantages such as inefficiency, inconsistency, training issues, lack of clarity and direction, legal issues from being non-compliant, receiving department or division complaints, and waste of product.
Here's our action plan. This plan encouragement for employees while implementing step-by-step processes to improve efficiency. So step 1 is to implement how-to guides, standards, procedures, and clear measurables for all processes and daily operation within the weld shop. Step 2 is to obtain employee surveys of the current operation, both positive and negative feedback. Step 3 is assess the process to determine what can be improved and offer training and safety protocols. Step 4, to communicate these standard processes to all personnel within the weld shop. Step 5, encourage employees to strive for customer satisfaction for residents of the city of Cleveland. And lastly, step 6 is to conduct regular employee surveys to obtain feedback to make further improvements and discussion of any concerns. Here are our deliverables. Step-by-step process have been created, but not yet implemented. Our next step is to share with our appointing authority and receive direction or approval on how to proceed forward.
This process mapping outlines the new step-by-step process. So if you look on our step-by-step process and map, the items to the left are kind of how my day goes as far as what would happen first thing in the morning, which is receiving and distributing the morning reports. Then I will coordinate with the motor vehicle maintenance foreman over there and coordinate with the motorized equipment supervisor. Then I more than likely go out and manage weld shop operations, coordinate the residential guardrail placement, send my graffiti crew out for graffiti and vandalism management. If needed, tree lawn restoration and repairs. And then the rest of the items are kind of spider webbed throughout from step by step, because those items generally happen at some point throughout the day, but they all happen in no particular order, but they all kind of go on as far as meetings, using advantage, coordinating with property management, weekend salt truck placement for events. Actually, we have an event today with Rod Stewart and everything else going on. So there's a lot of things going on as far as event coordination and things like that. So so here is our actual step-by-step process that we've developed over the next 3 slides. And these have already been integrated in the what you saw in the previous process mapping slide. So I'm not going to read like all through them all, but processes like 5 through 7 are probably like, these are things that we could complete for the entire city of Cleveland, as far as like guardrail, graffiti, and tree lawn restoration. Process 16 and 17 are completed by Division of Streets employees, also for the entire city of Cleveland, where we place salt trucks to block streets for parades, festivals, for pedestrian security, and coordinate with various divisions for special projects as needed, such as Cleveland Browns events like the concert that'll be happening later on today, Rod Stewart.
So with our project, we have accomplished step-by-step processes for the well shop. The future impact will contribute to ongoing operational excellence. And for adjustments and improvements, we will continue to brainstorm and implement and revise as needed.
In conclusion, we continue to find ways to cope with issues while serving the community. The lack of detailed step-by-step SOPs places us under undue stress to employees who are expected to perform their roles efficiently without adequate guidance.
So this concludes our presentation, and we're open for questions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good work, team. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and hop into the question and answer box. Let's see. We've got a question from Mindy Vance. And actually, this is a good one. Have you worked with Cleveland Lean Liaison to make sure that processes are the most efficient before writing the SOPs? So that's interesting because I know Rob is doing some boot camps over at the city of Cleveland. So have you all taken the boot camp training yet?
No, we have not.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah, I got applications in your mailbox right now. If you go out there and look, our next cohort will be this spring. So, no, I'll just go ahead, answer the question.
No. Well, we're welcome. I'll welcome your email. And
Rob, do you have a question?
I do. I just want to say thank you. I think this is wonderful. I really appreciate the fact that you looked at this so thoroughly and just did a great analysis and documented the actual flow chart and the steps. Also, the fact of what was actually your job titles on those under civil service as opposed to what you do on a day-to-day operations. And I'm seeing this across the state that I'm trying to pick my words properly, but maybe some antiquated systems need to be evaluated as far as how the actual operations run. And I think that there's an opportunity, I guess I'll put it that way, for the entire system to come together. And I don't mean just the city of Cleveland, I mean like the civil service and public administration to evaluate, how are we actually developing and executing job descriptions, opportunities, the roles, responsibilities, and tasks and functions. There is a significant push from the city of Cleveland. I mean, I know that your commissioner is a big supporter of this kind of stuff, as well as working with Ed Romero and a bunch of other folks from the city of Cleveland to not only look at professional development for folks like yourselves, but trying to look ways for it to be more efficient, effective across the entire platform. So it's not just about getting a credential. It's not just about doing things better. It's also looking at how are we developing our people that are here and putting them in positions to be successful. When earlier in the slide deck mentioned about that you were training somebody and they were making $10,000 more than you, that does cause an issue for folks that have that knowledge and experience and dedication, the knowledge, skills, and ability. And then you're working with somebody that's getting, paid more than you, and you have to teach them. So I think as an institution, and I think as the folks that are in the public service have to look at this and say, wait a minute, those market conditions that are forcing them to hire people at a higher rate, they need to look back and say, okay, who is in our current service, our team here, and make sure that we're fair, that we have equity across the board. So I'm not saying that as a dig. I'm saying that I appreciate the fact that you raised that as something that needs to be addressed. And I'm pretty confident that there's some interest to evaluate this. And I appreciate your leadership, all four of you, to bring that to folks' attention, but also your willingness to be part of the solution. It's one thing to sit there and complain about, oh, this is terrible, this and that, but say, here's some options, here's what we can do, here's how we could be part of that solution as we move forward. I'm always big on the 3 E's, as you know, the equip, empower, and execute. And I really appreciate the fact that you took the tools from the class identified an issue in your workplace, and then we're able to really, I think, eloquently put together a cohesive project for the city of Cleveland to take a look at. So thank you for your guidance and leadership here. So I don't really have a question per se. I think it is a fantastic project, and whatever I can do to help facilitate that discussion, let me know. I'll pass it back to you, Kat, for
Thank
any
you.
other comments or questions.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rob.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with a comment from Scott. So Scott, our board member, said, "I love the specificity of this project because it allows for immediate application and provides the detail needed for anyone to oversee these operations." Thank you, Scott. I have a question from Dory. Dory wants to know, what has the response been from your leadership?
Well, we haven't presented our SOPs as of yet, but this is the actual job duties and responsibilities that are performed on a daily basis by Eric Turk, from step one to step, whatever, but they have not yet been reviewed by our appointing authorities. We do not believe there will be an issue because our duties and responsibilities do need to be outlined should we exit or be unavailable to do them.
Okay, thank you for that answer. We also have Peter Cummings would like to know if you have received any pushback in your efforts to clarify these processes.
No, we have not. Have you?
No, not really. I don't, well, because I guess because we haven't really presented it, I don't think that there would be any. I don't propose there would be, but I think it would just be an effort to try to get it to get it actually just changed in the civil service.
This definitely, creating SOPs is definitely a great thing because there have been instances in the past where an employee has left the city and the new person that was hired in their position does not know how to do the job.
Or they got hired into a job and they applied, and then once they got hired into the position and there were many other additional duties, and they were like, and then it's hard to have employee retention because they'll just quit or leave because they were like, hey, I didn't sign up for this, I signed up for that. And so you just gotta hire them and hope that they'll be willing to do these extra additional duties, but you kind of you need to specify what it is that they'll actually be doing.
And having these SOPs too will prevent so many errors that can be made. Because if you have a person that is placed in a position and they are really trying to do their job, but they don't know the steps, there are going to be many errors and many unhappy people that they are working with on, who would, it may be the person or department may be affected in a negative way when you have this new employee just trying to simply do a job and a job well done.
Well, thank you, everyone. That is time. So Yana, Eric, Anna, and Brenda, awesome job. We are very grateful for all your hard work throughout PMA. Okay, and we're back. Next up, we have Peter Cummings. Peter is from the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Peter, over to you.
Good morning, and thanks everyone for being here. My name is Peter Cummings. I am a communications specialist at RTA, working in the service quality department, specifically in what we call the Integrated Communications Center at the main office building. Service quality is the department that handles the buses and trains, the operation thereof once they leave their respective districts. We have bus coordinators talking to operators. We have control center supervisors talking to train operators. We have a central communications specialist who, among other things, They have the duty of monitoring and engaging or shutting off power to trains. And we have me. I work, as I say, as the communications specialist who, among other duties, I'm responsible for communicating with riders in emergency situations through a couple of our platforms that we offer for rider engagement. I also communicate some of those interruptions internally to our marketing department and other departments as necessary for understanding and distribution. We've heard a lot today about retirements, and I think it's interesting that it is so prevalent and so in the conversation of where things are, especially in government work. As a student of public administration, it was given to me that at no other point in history have there been so many generations working together in the workplace, from baby boomers all the way down to, I think, Gen Z. That I don't suppose there are any Gen Alpha employees yet in the workplace. But we have many different age groups working together. And as we're at this point where the baby boomers are retiring and even some older Gen X workers, I found myself at a point coming into RTA and looking around at the documentation that we worked with, of realizing that some of the people we'll be losing soon have a lot of work experience to offer that can inform that documentation and really help service, in the case of RTA, for decades down the road. To begin, and I like pie, so everything is done in a pie chart. RTA has about 2,200 employees, and this year we had 54 who were immediately eligible for retirement. That's 2% of the employees. If you look a little bit further out, though, you'll see that we have 230 employees who, over the next 4 years or so, maybe 3 years by now since I've started the project, will be eligible for retirement in that time frame. Now we're talking 10%. When you zoom in even further to service quality, that's the department that I work in, we have 60 employees. These are the employees, as I say, who are in the ICC, the communications center, on the radios, talking to bus operators, talking to train operators, running the power that runs the trains, communicating with riders, being out on the streets, talking to passengers, helping them get to the right bus. 60 people, core group, and 24 of them in the next 4 years will be eligible for retirement over that time. That's 40%. And when you look at management in service quality, 2 of the managers are immediately eligible to retire whenever they want. One of them, in fact, is a retire rehire. And both of those 2 people together have more than 80 years of experience that could leave immediately. A third is within that 4-year range. And so it is not inconceivable that in that 4 years, all of that last pie will be gone. And remember, I like pie. So, how do we ensure continuity of service? When you talk to somebody who does communications, the answer will always be in that vein. More writing, more talking, more recording, more documentation. And there's certainly plenty of that available at RTA in the form of standard operating procedures and administrative processes. These need to be reviewed and updated against the experience of these soon-to-retire managers as fast as possible. None of these are out of date per se, but they could all benefit from that kind of exchange, that kind of interview process with the experience those managers have. So how do we do that? Well, my first suggestion is to update the role of my job, the communications specialist. Currently, as I say, I work as an interpreter, if you will, between our internal people and the customers or our other departments. What doesn't need to be involved in that anymore is perhaps needing to know how to program computers. And that was part of the job description when I was hired 2 years ago. And just deal on that time frame for 2 minutes. 2 years I've been there, and these other people have been there for 40 years. There's a lot to learn and not a lot of time to do it. So updating the job role, take away the computer programming, add in the benefits of being multilingual. I don't happen to be, but I think it's a great idea. A second thing that would benefit many facets of communication, whether you're talking about hiring or broadening the job duties of a communications specialist, those duties need to be expanded out and shared by others. Right now, I work Monday through Friday in the office between 7:30 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. And that day could involve dealing with communicating rail emergencies. It could involve meetings, the steering committee with the city of Cleveland. It could involve working on an operating procedure. But it's limited to that 7:30 to 4 window. I'm also on call 24/7. So if an emergency happens at midnight, it's not impossible that I would get a call and ask to help put out information to riders, to other departments. Having more people involved in that process would cover a greater share of in-person time in the communications center at the main office building. It would provide coverage beyond that on-call nature of things. It would help share that. And in the meantime, it would build up a natural reserve, a natural capacity to talk to these other managers, to talk to them about their experiences, to update processes and procedures as they naturally come under review. I will say in passing that I worked in journalism for 20 years, and so this is a type of action that's near and dear to me. And I'm just very fortunate in working for RTA and the job that I have, that this idea, this interviewing of these managers, this collaboration of departments and the way that this can be recorded for future generations is already something that I had started gathering. I've got binders of this that's already in the process of being updated. But the fact that it could turn into a project for PMA was really validating. And I think speaks to the point that there are a lot of ways that we can all work to address the retirement wave, the retirement cliff that we are all facing. I showed you the binder. What you see on the screen is a list of just some of the types of documents that have been updated. I mentioned the job description. I've created a draft of what one could look like. You see the St. Patrick's Day 2024 operations. That's not one that I created. That's one that I had a part in helping inform. Like I said, this involves multiple departments. Having more people or having more staff that can communicate from central communications, from our operations center, can go a long way towards making those work well. The zone maps mentioned at the bottom, my manager, who has been with RTA for almost 40 years, has done who knows how many iterations of these supervisor zone maps. And it's not just a simple geographic breakdown of where they might operate. You have to consider how population has shifted. You have to consider how maybe new roads have been built. You have to consider how service has changed and what buses run where. And all of that is information that can be recorded, even if it's not on the document itself in the case of the zone maps, but it can be recognized and registered and understood and passed on. That's what we're trying to do. The best particular example on this page is the planned shutdown communication process for rail. That was a document when I came on that had been started as a draft a couple of years before. And service quality and our team had been perhaps primarily responsible for some number of years in the recent history of things for making signs, for hanging signs. Indeed, the public information officer for RTA previously had my job, and he remained involved in that process. And he and I worked together with my manager and others to codify how things could work better, how what we had done had served a purpose in the time that it acted in the way that it did, but what could we do better? So now, instead of having our rail supervisors who are out in the field checking on-time performance, instead of having them hang these signs, instead of having someone make copies on paper in order to have those signs to hang, the new process, which had to be signed off on by the CEO, has us gathering the information. It has our public information officer creating the notice. It has the sign shop creating the signs and hanging the signs and taking down the signs. And it still leaves room for what had to happen on an interim, perhaps you might say emergency basis with the paper signs. I keep a stack on the corner of my desk of signs for every active single station closure, single track, shutdown, that kind of thing. And we have one coming up this weekend on the west side on our red line. And I've got a stack of papers for that too. So what works? Well, not me personally, I'm saying, but the role of the communications specialist is a central role. And it's conducive in its location to creating and promoting a greater understanding of operations within RTA and its divisions. The weaknesses, as I mentioned, include the fact that it's an in-person role for 40 hours a week and an on-call role beyond that. There's not a really easily identifiable internal path into or out of that position, and it creates a lack of continuity in communications at times. But what we need to focus on is that every threat is an opportunity. So where we have this retirement cliff and where we have this potential loss of 80 collective years of wisdom, maybe even over 100, if all three of the managers who have been in service quality were to go in the next 4 years, those are opportunities to look at what we have, to document everything that we can in the meantime, and look at the staff turnover as a way to build based on that experience. Maybe not what we had, but what we could have coming from that. I love the acronyms in PMA. So the SMART goals, there are 3. Update the communications specialist job description, expand the communication duties to others, and codify the experiences of senior staff. They're specific. They're all limited to either a single role, a single set of duties, or defined by their correlation to the administrative processes and the standard operating procedures. They're measurable by definition because of that very specific nature of them. They're achievable. The draft is already done for the job description. There is conversational support for the idea of broadening some of these job duties. And the communications role is built to codify language. It's relevant because everything that we do supports service. That's the core goal. Provide service, provide better for communications. And it's time-bound, based entirely on that 4-year window. Once these people retire, maybe I'll get a call every so often from my manager, but I bet it's not going to be about what shutdown is coming up, what buses are being rerouted. I have a limited time to get that information. Better communication promotes better service. That breeds political goodwill. Better service promotes greater use by the public. That supports economic growth. Economic growth promotes a greater sense of community and social benefit. And that shared sense of community cycles back around to support better communication. And this isn't the first time we've seen these words today. It's about the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I added the how. Who? Add more people, new or cross-trained. What? Assign them to service communications, both real-time in the office and in relation to long-term documentation and planning. Where? Well, Zoom isn't the perfect way to do this kind of work. It needs to happen in the office as much as possible. And communications always happens better in person. And when? I'll say it again, we've got 4 years to make this work. The why I want to be self-evident. It's to record and transmit transit experience to the benefit of our users. And the how is just to decide to act. Now's the time. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
Great job, Peter. Wow. So I'm just gonna say, like, that was awesome. You know, I know we practiced and you were a little nervous after that first run, but you did a great job. You really pulled it off, and what an amazing project. Really needed. Rob talks about this all the time. Rob, I know you've got some comments or a question, I can tell. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to echo what Kat said. Great job, Peter. I wasn't nervous about you at all, and you're a professional. So that was, but I think you really just brought it to a head and to a point as to what's going on here. Your statistics at the beginning there with your pie. First of all, I'm right there with you. I love pie as well. But your the charts there to just demonstrate within your area about the potential retirement, the years of experience, that knowledge, the institutional knowledge is going to walk out the door. Whether they walk out or they just leave, whatever happens, that's going to be substantial. I do want to, though, shout out the RTA. I think that they're one of the top partners that we have that have seen this silver tsunami coming. They are the reason that we have the Public Management Academy platform the way that we do. Our partnership with the RTA through the Public Transit Management Academy back in 2010, and then the city of Cleveland before that, really kind of set the framework for how we came up with the projects, the classes, things like that. So shout out to all the leadership there, the previous leadership and the current folks that are there, because they saw it coming and are really trying to really put something in place to kind of fix this issue. So I just think that your project really did put a additional spotlight and saying, hey, we got to continue to focus on this at every level of the organization. I also like the fact of putting together different techniques, applications, and conversations to continue to share what everybody does and make sure that you're working with the management especially on the communication side of things for the function as to instead of just yourself. Like, so when folks are worried about, hey, we're going to have Susie, Jim, whatever, Tom leave the organization, we talk about that person, but we still, that role, that function, that task, that assignment, that's the key part. And so I love the project in the sense of how do we make sure that that continues on and that communications is across the board, internally and externally. So I don't really have a question. I just want to say that phenomenal. There's a long-standing tradition of amazing people from the RTA coming through the Public Management Academy, and you continue that trajectory and that tradition. So
thank you for your kind words.
That's true. You've been a great, valuable resource, and so have they as far as a partner to the organization. So thanks. Kat, back to you.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so I have a couple comments and questions for you. Actually, Crystal from our board said she would love to see something like this at Cleveland State. I could not agree more. Tashwanda Mason said, great job, Peter. This presentation was amazing, and you did a great job keeping us engaged. And then I have a question from Rita Gallardo. Rita says, great job, Peter. Did you talk to leadership on this? What was their feedback?
Well, the leadership that I talked to primarily centered around working with my direct manager. I did also speak to our chief operating officer a couple of times in passing around it, and that's how I'm aware that there's sort of a broader interest in being able to expand that communications possibility. But the real focus of this, and again, perhaps because I was already doing this after a fashion before it became a project, most of my conversation came with my direct manager, and I don't think I addressed it in the presentation itself, but the nature of work and service quality can be sort of all or nothing sometimes. And so there could be a lot of quiet time and then all of a sudden an emergency. And it can be hard to plan sometimes to be able to sit down for a meeting. So you take the opportunities you have and you talk through those moments. Through the process of creating that planned rail shutdown procedure that I did mention, there was conversation both with the chief operating officer, with other upper level management in the in RTA, and indeed it had to be, as I said, signed off on by our CEO, India Birdsong Terry. And as a result, there was feedback, at least specifically in that instance. But what it did for me was just sort of validate and again reaffirm the nature of what I was doing. Bigger comments, bigger questions. There's probably a lot to answer or consider in the way that this might evolve or play out. But at least I know for what I'm doing and in the way that I'm doing it, I'm good to continue as much as I can.
Great. Thank you, Peter. We have
Thank
one
you.
more question for you. Stephanie Otten asks, do you face any organizational barriers to preparing employees for filling upcoming vacancies?
Well, speaking specifically from service quality, I think there's a natural barrier in just the fact that there's a job to do every day. Now, sure, that's true in every department. But when we have our field supervisors out dealing with buses and passengers and operators and reroutes, it's hard to build in time away from doing that job because that's a job that has to get done. So what you see in when there are promotions from within, people will shadow existing employees. We assign them on a week or 2 week rotating basis with other people who hold a similar position into which they've been promoted. So the barrier in some ways is also the best training opportunity. Time is at a premium for everyone. That's not the first time that's been said this morning either. But you just take advantage of the fact that the job is always getting done and try to pair people with the established employees who are doing those jobs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. Okay, we're back. We have another participant from the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Wendy Finn is here to present. All right, Wendy, over to you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Wendy Finn. I'm with the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, and I am with the Office of Management and Budget. My project is on expanding resources for renewable energy in public transit. So just to give an idea of the scale of our operations here at RTA, last year we had 14.8 million bus miles and 2.8 million rail car miles. And that is just to say that anything that we can do to green our fleets is going to have a big impact. And then also just wanted to say that for this presentation, I had a lot of fun with AI. So this train and almost all the images that you're going to see are not RTA vehicles. They're not real. They're just AI transit fiction, and we have no solar panels on any trains. This is just to give a visual of long-term vision of totally decarbonized transit. So the scope and overview of this project. So globally, decarbonizing energy is going to be a huge, huge, huge endeavor. And public transit is one piece of that. And the scope of this project is very limited, just in trying to get an idea of what is available for public transit now and what we can expect in the coming years and decades. And from a budget perspective, what we can do to be prepared and keep gathering that information so that we can be a part of it. The goals are to reduce emissions, financial stability, and energy resiliency. So this does fit into RTA's mission, vision, and strategic plan. Our 10-year strategic plan includes equity and environmental sustainability. And traction, metrics that we use to track our performance, it includes equity in that we track the capital dollars that are invested in environmental justice zones or EJ zones, and it also tracks emission reductions. So the why, we are a public transit agency, not an electric utility. So why would we want to get involved with this going forward and into the future? So 2024 is on record to break more heat records. We had 5 tornadoes in the region in Northeast Ohio on August 6th. And that came with some major power outages that again reminds us of the need for energy resiliency. So some aspects impacted. So the environment, of course, the transportation sector in the United States is responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. And actually the transportation sector's portion has been increasing because other sectors have been decarbonizing at a faster rate. This impacts equity because transit goes through, especially here in the Cleveland-Cuyahoga region, it goes through a lot of EJ neighborhoods. Climate change impacts low-income neighborhoods first, and also more immediately on air quality. Our emissions directly impacts air quality. So as we travel through environmental justice zones, it would be more helpful to reduce emissions. Reliability is a huge factor because we can expect that the extreme weather is going to continue into the future. And with that will be more power outages that we'll have to deal with. And as public transit, there is a push to transition to electric vehicles or EVs. But as we do that, we're going to need more reliable energy sources to keep those going because transit is an essential service. So for financial stability, these transitions require a lot of very expensive upfront costs. And there is a long-term payout and benefits, but it's very long-term. So, so for the future, but this is necessary for financial stability because looking forward, the economists do predict that fuel costs and energy costs are going to continue to increase and become more volatile. And then also long-term electric vehicles, from what we hear, they have lower maintenance costs because they have fewer parts. So the how, the when, and the who. The how for decarbonizing transportation, one thing is to reduce the vehicle miles traveled that communities do. Stephanie's project addresses that. This project is focused more on cleaning those vehicle miles traveled. So we have, for the most part, we have a set number of miles that we travel. So the cleaner that we can travel those miles, the better, of course. The when, so this is an image of people waiting at a bus stop just to highlight them when something takes longer than you think it's going to. It can be frustrating, and this is probably going to be a really long process. The who, there's a lot of smart people working on this everywhere, including here at RTA. People who will need to be involved will be all the staff at RTA, all of RTA's stakeholders, and future generations. So people who aren't even in the workforce yet are going to be working and here at RTA helping that happen. Oops. So are we putting the cart before the horse? So why would we go to the trouble and the expense to electrify fleets if most of Ohio energy comes from coal fire, natural gas, and nuclear right now? So this is another step in the evolution of public transportation in Cleveland. So way back in the day, going back in history, obviously another AI picture here, public transportation had horse-drawn streetcars. And then a fun fact about Cleveland, the first commercial electric rail in the United States was here in Cleveland. Last century was dominated by diesel bus. This century, we are dominated by CNG bus, which is one step in cleaning emissions, and that's compressed natural gas. Public transit is starting to transition to EVs, but the way the electricity comes now, that's all fossil fuel energy. And then the long-term goal, the long-term vision is to have EVs that are completely decarbonized energy. So this is to illustrate that this is a two-step process, has to happen in parallel. One thing is to electrify our fleets. So the image on the bottom on the right, that is not AI, that is an actual rapid train, and that's to show that our rapid is electric and always has been, so that's halfway there. And then in parallel, we also need to decarbonize our energy so we can slowly rely less on traditional power plants like what's shown on the left. And then on the right, that's a Google Map image of the Harvard Garage. So Cuyahoga County purchased the Harvard Garage from RTA a few years ago, and they installed rooftop solar on top. And the people there report that the rooftop solar provides 25 to 30% of energy, so they actually have on-site generation there. So RTA, another fiction picture that is not an RTA logo. RTA has taken several steps already to start to decarbonize. They have phased out most of the diesel fleet. They have a climate action plan. We recently received a $10.6 million grant for an EV pilot, and that's through IIJA funds. And they're also getting ready to do no emission study. So this pestle analysis kind of goes through some of the major factors that will affect implementation. Of course, there's political. We have elections coming up in November. It affects funding streams and rules and regulations that affect us. At the state level, we get ODOT funding, the PUCO, Public Utility Commission of Ohio, they impact energy regulation. Locally, our MPO is NOACA. We work with them, and political support comes from cities and the county. On the economic side, the challenge there is that public transit is already underfunded. At the same time, we are currently going through a rail car replacement process. And that program, it's a very, very expensive infrastructure program. So that's tying up a lot of our dollars and is necessary. Another economic challenge is that the return on investment it's very long. Social aspect, change is always difficult. Not everybody is convinced of the need. Technology, this uses a lot of new technology. So battery storage is not ultimately where we need it to be, and energy security continues to be a challenge. Environment, of course, is a factor. And then legal, so transportation and energy are two highly regulated fields with a lot of complexity. So the action plan, first to anticipate funding opportunities in transit, and then to research non-traditional funding opportunities and other financing options that are out there. I think we can learn a lot of lessons from early deployment of other transit agencies, and not just transit agencies, but electric vehicles. We have our plans coordinated and ready as opportunities arise, and then create pilots and scale them up as the costs come down and reliability improves. So the status of the project is that I've had conversations with people internally and externally, learned a lot about renewable energy developments coming up in Northeast Ohio, identified data to track, data that could help support funding applications, and that we would need to report as we do transition to no emission vehicles. There are a lot of tools out there that we now have available, things to help with cost benefit analysis, environmental justice benefit analysis, and guidance on how to work with utilities to implement things. So on the federal landscape, things that are going on right now, there's a lot of money out there for things to be starting to be deployed on electric vehicles. There's a lot of IIJA funding out there, Clean School Bus Program. I find that interesting just because that might be an easier way to get started because school buses don't have to run all day long. So the whole battery storage thing, you know, they can go back and charge and then help with getting the advancements out to everybody else. There's the Inflation Reduction Act, which has tax credits in the form of direct pay that some governments are looking into. There's the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, so that could lead to more guidance and possibly funding opportunities and regulatory streamlining. There's a joint interagency statement of shared commitment. So back in May, there was a 6-department signed on agreement to show a commitment to environmental justice and transportation, and those departments are represented on the slide at the bottom. Emergency preparedness and resiliency continues to be a high priority for the federal government. And of course, transit is an essential service, and in an emergency, you know, we could potentially be needed for evacuation, and it's just important to have that resiliency. Justice 40 is an initiative where a lot of the federal programs aim to have 40% of their benefits go to census tracts that have been identified as having environmental injustice. And a lot of our routes, most of our routes do go through Justice 40 tracks. And then, of course, the November elections coming up. So, you know, there's been a lot of EV dollar deployment from the Biden administration, and looking at Harris's and Waltz's track record. If they were elected, that could continue. Trump hasn't been vocally as supportive of EV, so that could really affect momentum. And then as far as Congress, if Senate went back to Republicans, that could also affect momentum. And then on the state level, a snapshot of what's going on. Utility-wise, this area is very unique in that in Cuyahoga County, we actually have 3 utilities that could provide energy. So there's a city county, a municipal utility, a county utility, and an investor-owned utility. So PUCO regulates the investor-owned utility, which for us is the illuminating company, and that is under First Energy. The municipal utility, Cleveland Public Power, or CPP, they're under the mayor, and the city of Cleveland has committed to 100% renewable energy by 2050. And then there's the first county public utility in the country. It started here in 2021. It is Cuyahoga Green Energy. They're focused on renewable energy and resiliency and developing microgrids. So the plan is, the way that that will work is that they are tied to the grid, but then if there's a power outage, they can kind of cut themselves off and go into island mode and use their own energy generation to continue providing energy to essential services. So projections are that demand is going to keep increasing for energy with things like AI and data centers and EVs. So that could just bring more cost and security volatility. So just more need for energy generation. And then on the funding side, at the state level, this is a grants dashboard, keep monitoring. We get a lot of our funding through ODOT. We get some through EPA. There's possibilities for others, development funds. There's Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust. Looking elsewhere at other states, there's electric utility EV programs. One structure that's used is utilities building up renewable infrastructure and then recouping those costs through rates to the customers. So some examples of renewable energy that will be coming locally. There are some big federal grants that were awarded recently. In April, there was a $156 million grant that included 5 Ohio cities. It's called Solar for Our, and it's going to provide residential rooftop solar to low-income communities. Then in July, there's the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. That's a $129 million grant that's going to be used to close a coal-fired power plant in Paynesville, and it's going to replace it with Ohio's largest project plus battery. And through that, CPP and Cuyahoga Green Energy are going to get about $48 million that they can use to develop solar on 5 landfills in the county. And then Cuyahoga County, they also have solar arrays already, and they use power purchase agreements to pay for those. And then looking elsewhere at transit projects, so looking at National Transit Database, the official public transit data center, it does look like no emission vehicles have tripled over the last decade for which available data. So we can expect that to increase pretty quickly in the coming years with all the IIJA funding out there. And then here I just listed some cities, some localities that already have no emission vehicles, just as a place to look to for like lessons learned. Some of the challenges here as far as like not a lot of sun or cold winters. It looks like some of these localities would have some of the same challenges. So maybe there's things we could learn there because apparently cold weather, it makes charging take longer. It makes the vehicles less efficient. Solar, of course, if it's cloudy, that can be a problem. So I listed Seattle, and I also list them because I find them interesting because between Sound Transit and King County Metro, they also work with both an investor-owned utility and a municipal utility. And with that, they provide carbon-free rail and zero-emission buses. And most of these localities do seem to have carbon reduction goals or mandates, so that seems to impact it. So looking forward to opportunities and pain points. Opportunities, there's the Justice 40 initiative again. There's the city and county utilities that are going to be generating renewable energy. Long term, we can look forward to more stable and lower utility costs, maintenance costs on the vehicles, and the predictability of what to expect. But before we get there, there are quite a few pain points. One is the very long return on investment. So, our operating budget is 1 year, our capital improvement plan is 5 years. We have some longer term forecasts that go 10 years. State law prohibits energy contracts to go longer than 10 years. And the return on investment, as prices are now, is longer than that. There's a lot of regulatory complexity. Reliability is a factor. There's range anxiety. Is the bus going to run out of power in the middle of the route? It's a huge change from how we have it now, where we can just keep fuel on hand and gas up as we need it. That's a big change to go to EVs that relies on constant energy supply. Like the power outage August 6th, the rail went down because until FirstEnergy could get it back up, because it does just rely on constant supply either through the working grid or battery storage, and energy security. And then HB 6, I put this up there. That is the state legislation tied to the energy regulation corruption piece. So mentioned on the news again this morning, SEC had a $100 million fine, and that had the repeal of the 2008 Renewable Portfolio Standard and the nuclear bailout. And that's just to say that the state legislature has not been as supportive of renewable energy as we hope they will be going forward. So next steps are to plan and apply for funding and continue to look at financing options, to analyze the cost benefit as prices come down, continue to monitor emissions and outages, adapt as technology advances, and to learn from others. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. That was amazing. I am really, really impressed by all your work on this, and it's just such an important thing. So I appreciate everything that you've done. And I just had a quick question. I was curious as to what PMA tools did you find the most helpful, or any specific sessions when you were building out this project?
The ones that Dr. Madden, like when she went through the pestle analysis and a couple of analyses as well, different types of analyses, but I ended up going with the pestle of just kind of breaking down of what the major factors are in the community and the environment that could inhibit or get the project going. I thought those were the most helpful.
Thank you for that. We have a comment from Julie Finnegan. Julie said, "What a difficult climate to take on such a necessary and impactful project. No questions, just great work, Wendy."
Thank you.
And then we do have a question from Mindy Vance. Mindy asks, "Do you think the next governor's election may have an impact as well?"
Yes, but I have no idea what to expect. But absolutely, yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for your honesty. I know Rob's got a question.
I do. So I mentioned already about my being part of the family at the RTA, but I'm also just fascinated, and I don't want this to be a controversial statement, but I'm fascinated by Tesla, not from Elon Musk, but Tesla in general. And I literally listen to podcasts and all kinds of stuff on YouTube TV about Tesla and battery storage and EVs adoption and all that kind of stuff like that. My question to you, Wendy, is has there been conversations from your knowledge or what you're working on about how that integration or any kind of partnership / competition from companies like Tesla when they are trying to introduce and kind of expand the EV adoption from a local level, and especially with autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I really don't know. The little bit, I don't know much on the technology side. The more I learn, I don't know. But there's like a few manufacturers who manufacture buses, and I don't think Tesla has gone into that realm yet, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the reason for my question, I don't want to put you on a spot or even cause any kind of controversy, is just that what I'm hearing that they're really getting into is the battery storage and energy storage to try to put that like out in the community so that where any kind of power failures, there was, energy to access during that downtime. So that might be something to take a look at as far as
Yeah.
with the RTA. And the other part is like when I love your report because in your presentation and your actual layout, because the two things that I'm fascinated by is AI and Tesla. So AI, artificial intelligence, and electric vehicles. And the idea about the autonomous vehicles, I'm not going to go off too much on a tangent, but they're trying to use electric vehicles and autonomous driving. So there's no drivers. They just have a taxi system all over that you can just ride hail and not even own your own vehicle, but just use this system. So I just wondered if that's ever been part of the conversation from a public transit authority perspective of, is there going to be difference? What does this industry look like 2030?
Yeah. No, I have read stuff about like some transit agencies looking into potentially someday having, autonomous vehicles driving and then having somebody there, they're not the driver, but then, they can do the many roles that are required of, they could transit police and whatever else, like, taking fares and all of that, and then have the vehicle be autonomous, but nothing like that here.
Yeah, well, congratulations on a fantastic. I knew that you were gonna end the day on a strong note. I stepped out to look for our microphone because we have a plastic mic that we dropped the mic, and I was definitely looking for that, but we left it at our last boot camp location, so I don't have it. But fantastic! I just want to say congratulations. Thank you again for your long commitment with us for both PMA and Leadership Academy and everything you've done with us. Again, I just want to say thank you to everyone, the presenters for today, the sponsoring agencies that invested in your folks and invested in us. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I am thrilled. Again, the bar is getting raised every single cohort that comes through. Also, thank you for our statewide advisory board members that showed up and spent some time with us today. Everybody that was part of this group, I just want to say thank you. Fantastic work. And also thank you, everybody, for preparing fantastic projects. Your time frame and your timing and delivery was phenomenal. You can just tell that you put a lot of effort and time into this. So fantastic. Over to you, Kat.
All right, absolutely. Really great job, everyone. I'm so proud of all of you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend.